Everybody's
Christine,
being recorded.
Christine, do you have the outline open?
I
or
do.
You can see it. Okay.
Yes. Now I have the one
We
that's
just
called HTHE. Is that the right one? Because you sent two.
do you have one that says episode 18, Bright Young Women?
It says episode. Well, the actual title is HTHE, but the bold it says episode 18, book review for Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. But you,
yeah, that should be it.
Yeah,
that should be it.
Oh, maybe it's because it's in our HTHE folder. Maybe that's why.
Do you see a cursor moving right now across under the title?
No. So let's the other one then, which is.
Do you see a cursor, Jessica? Am I in the
see
right
it.
one? Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, move a cursor. Yes, girl, I got it. Yeah.
There you go. That's the right one. So we just pretty much follow right along through that, but you can speak up whenever you want to, say whatever you want to. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if for some reason we get a delay and people start freezing up, we don't have to record with video. We can just worry about the audio. Because that happened with Dave Becker last time. We had him for like an hour and then he started freezing up. So
yeah. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So Tammy, are you cool with me doing all the in-between stuff since you're going to be doing the book? Okay.
Yep.
Hello, fellow weirdos, and welcome to Horror Through Her Eyes. You've got the Amateur Destroyer and the Taminator here, ready to explore the twisted world of horror and prove that girls enjoy horror just as much as the guys do. Tonight, we have a very special guest, one of our founding listeners, Christine Lynd. And Christine is an avid reader. Yay! So we thought this assignment would be right up her alley. Aside from reading the book with us, she also informed us of a movie starring Mila Kunis, which is based on one of Jessica Knoll's other books called The Luckiest Girl Alive. So we will be reviewing that briefly after we discuss the book. Christine, thank you so much for joining us today. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I'm totally fangirling right now to be on here with this.
Sorry.
As I said, an OG Horrorcast listener from like before you guys were even on there, and I just, out of all the horror podcasts, I just keep coming back to them and coming back. You know, I love that you guys have your thing now, because you just strike me as the most genuine, inclusive, loving people that love the genre and everything about it. And you know, I love it. It's like listening to friends, and I put on the podcast and I'll listen to them usually at least twice, if not more, while I'm cleaning or doing something. And I love it. Love you guys.
Aw, we love you too. That's so nice.
Yes, that means everything to me. That's like everything I've ever hoped that we were, you know? So the fact that you feel that way, you have no idea what that means to us.
And oh my God, I have the exact same background where the horror cast, I started listening to them when it was Walshy and Horror Gal, before Vin joined, and it was my favorite. And I was like, I feel like these people are my friends. And I was so sad when the horror cast stopped briefly, semi-briefly. I was like, oh no, my favorite podcast. And then when Mark came back, I was like, yes, okay, good. So I totally get it.
And there's like we need to talk to Mark about like putting the old stuff back on too, because like there was like a deep dive y'all did into the Friday the 13th series, and I would love to go back to that, but I can't find it, at least on my podcast.
I guess that stuff. So I was on another podcast with Mark, was about the 80s. It was called Rag Radio. And all of those episodes, I guess, along with that early Horrorcast stuff is gone, I guess, or was on a hard drive that he doesn't have or he can't get into or something like that. So that really stinks. But I'm the same as you two. I started, I mean, from the beginning listening when it was, just the three of them, him, Walshy, and Horror Gal Susan. So, and
Yeah.
I was listening to any any horror podcast I could get at that time, which there weren't that many. But I thought Horrorcast and then horror movie podcasts were just like, they set the bar. You know, I can't believe I actually ended up on that show. I used to just wish, like, man, wish I could do something like that, you know, and I just feel blessed every day. It's so fun. So
You guys put in a lot of
and
work, I tell you. I have no doubt that you are all putting in a lot of work for this, and I appreciate it. And it's nobody else does that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting a peek behind the curtain, looking at our outline. You can see how much detail we put into it. And when Vin came on our first book review, he was like, "Oh my God, you guys do this much work for the podcast?" Because the Horrorcast is a little lighter on actual homework, you know what I mean? In preparation. So he's just like, "Whoa, you put all this detail into the outline?" I'm like, "Yep."
The outline, let me tell you. So
We are straight up professionals over here.
That's right.
Well, besides listening to the Horrorcast, did you want to talk a little bit about your horror fandom in general and kind of how it started? Did you enjoy horror when you were a kid, or did you come to love it?
So it probably all started. My earliest memory is my mom sending me to the neighbor's house to get my dad, who was at a party. And when I walked in, they were all in the living room watching the end of The Shining. And I walked in like right when the blood's coming out of the elevator, and the little girls are standing there, and then they're dead, and then they're standing there. And I was just like, oh my God, I could not take my eyes off it. And I was probably 10, I want to say 10. And I had a horrible nightmare that night, but it also, like, I wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
Some sort of electric charge, and I'm like, it was scary, but it's kind of fun to be scared. So, yeah, I pretty much, I watch a lot of movies, but like horror is just, that's the top thing I want to watch. And if it's stupid horror, even better. So
Nice.
yeah, and yeah, that's pretty much just ever since I was a teenager, or slightly earlier than teenager. I've just loved everything scary. So yeah.
That's awesome. Your origin story being imprinted by The Shining. That would.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like that, too young, leaves an impression.
absolutely. It's funny, the first time I found out about The Shining was actually through oh my God, why can't I think of Twister, you know, the movie Twister. They're watching The
Yes.
Shining on that big, you know, the big drive-in theater. And I remember asking my mom, "Oh, Mom, what are they watching?" She's like, "Oh, it's The Shining." And she was telling me about it. And I couldn't wait to watch The Shining after that. But isn't that funny that it was through Twister that I found out about it?
It is.
Huh?
But they're remaking Twister.
Yes. I don't think it's a remake. I think it's supposed to be like a sequel.
Yeah. So yeah, probably.
Yeah, I'm
What,
excited.
30 years later?
I was like, that's what that could be remade or redone or revisited, because I mean, it was great at the time with the special effects, but really it doesn't hold up anymore. So I was just having that thought, and then we went to Dune and saw a preview for it. I'm like, oh my God, I just had this idea that they should do another Twister.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that was definitely like comfort food for me when I was a kid. My mom and I watched Twister a lot. I've been trying to force my daughter to watch it for years, and she's like, "I'm not watching this."
We wouldn't like.
Am I remembering right? Did that have Bill Paxton in it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It has a great cast.
Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
I just remember the guy Cal flying around. It's not going to hold up now, I don't think.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
we used
remake will be
to.
all CGI now.
Uh,
I know.
all right. Well, thank you for introducing yourself to the rest of the listeners. For anyone who's in our Facebook group, you've probably seen Christine post and respond to things, which we really appreciate. We love our Facebook group, and it's growing, but right now it's still a little baby, but like a precious little baby that we really, really love. So Christine, we thought that it would be fun to have you participate as a kind of co-host tonight to give you a little taste. So we're going to let you go ahead and take us into our haunting headlines. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Tourist Trap remake in the works from producer Barbara Crampton. Every year, hundreds of young people travel the country and disappear. 45 years after the release of the cult classic Tourist Trap, Bloody Disgusting has exclusively learned this weekend that horror legend Barbara Crampton from Reanimator, Your Next, Jacob's Wife, Suitable Flesh will be producing an upcoming remake of the 1979 horror movie. Alliance Media Partners has acquired the rights to Tourist Trap, and Crampton, the company's vice president of production and development, will be producing a new take on the classic. Crampton is producing with Barb Portnoy, managing director and head of production at AMP. The original Tourist Trap was directed by David Schmoller, and in the film, a group of young friends stranded at a secluded roadside museum are stalked by a masked assailant who uses his telekinetic powers to control the attraction's mannequins. Chuck Connors played the villain Mr. Slauson, the owner of the Tourist Trap, Slauson's Lost Oasis. The ill-fated friends, well, they all get turned into mannequins, making for one
Spoiler alert.
finale. This slasher,
Spoiler alert.
with a supernatural twist, brings the nightmare fuel in the form of deeply unnerving mannequins. Mannequins are already terrifying with their lifelike appearance and vacant eyes. But what if they unhinged their jaws and made eerie sounds as they closed in on their victim for the kill? You get one of the creepiest slashers hailing from the golden era of the subgenre. Horror films under Alliance Media Partners label include Old Man, The Seed, The Wretched, Jacob's Wife, Amulet, The Endless, The Pale Door, and last year's Suitable Flesh.
Nice. Well, I'm really interested in what Tammy thinks because I know she loves Tourist Trap and she does not like remakes, but it is produced by Barbara Crampton.
Okay, so Lenny Buccatello shared this information with me on my own page, I think, and I was like, and it slipped into a deep depression. But he didn't include the information that Barbara Crampton was producing it, so that kind of turns it around for me. Like that, I know someone who loves horror and will do their best is behind this. So, and I think this is one of the rare things that I think it would be okay to remake. Like, I'm on board. Just please don't let it suck.
I haven't seen the original Tourist Trap, and I've been wanting to for a long time. So
give me your horror card right now. Hand it over.
No,
Christine, have you seen it?
I just literally watched it before this. I was like,
okay,
I'm gonna see where it's streaming, and I'll watch it this weekend. And then I'm like, well, I got time, so I watched it right before we did this podcast, and oh my gosh, it is like, it's greatness. It's just very. And actually, when I was searching for it, there's a version of it with, I don't know if you guys ever knew about Mystery Science Theater 3000 or if you're familiar with riff tracks, but there's a riff tracks where the people are making fun of the movie as the movie is going on. So I haven't seen that version yet, but I was like, oh, yes. No, I love like stupid period. And it's got Tanya Roberts in it. I mean, it's great.
I know. It's
okay,
awesome.
I'll watch it.
Jessica,
you gotta watch
it. You will love it. I promise you. Like, it is so up your alley. I just know you'll love it. It is a gem.
I do have it on my list for this podcast because I know that you love it and because like I've always wanted to watch it. So we will get around to that at some point for sure. What do you think about this?
Me?
Especially being fresh off of your first watch of the original. What do you think of this news?
Excited. I mean, I haven't seen anything with mannequins in a long time, so let alone the strange juxtaposition of the guy having carry powers, the telekinesis, and the mannequins, and it's sort of a slasher. Like, it's kind of, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I kind of trust Barbara Crampton, so.
Nice.
I mean,
I didn't realize
know
that
what,
she. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, you'll know what I'm talking about, Christine, but there is something, and I'm sure this looks like it had a budget of about $5, but there is something they achieve where they totally go into the uncanny valley with the way those mannequins move. And I mean, we just gave away the secret. The guy is like controlling them with his mind, but you don't learn, like, for your first watch, you don't learn that till later. And it's very unsettling,
It's
like
weird.
really unsettling.
Well, I mean,
Nice.
because it said it in the thing I read that there was telekinesis, but
Yeah.
it's a strange combo, but it kind of works. And those mannequins they're very disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. I don't even know what to compare it to, but it just takes it to a whole, from kind of a low budge 70s awesome slasher to like just elevates it. I don't know. They achieve something there. So if she can do that, I think it's going to be great.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize until recently she posted that she had produced Suitable Flesh. So she was kind of urging people like, hey, go watch Suitable Flesh on Shudder because I want to keep producing. I want to be a producer. Like, so she's getting into it, it sounds like. And she's like, I have so many projects I'm interested in. So please support Suitable Flesh. So might have to go watch it again just to support Barbara Crampton.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so I need to get on that. Okay, next in our headlines, we have horror legend Clive Barker brings Bloody Disgusting some good news and some bad news. The bad news is his days of appearing at horror conventions are coming to an end. The good news is he's diving headfirst into more writing in the coming months and years. These final convention appearances from Clive Barker will begin at Days of the Dead Chicago this year. Chris Rowe Management has let Bloody Disgusting know this morning that Chris Rowe Management and the Chris Rowe Management team tells us this will give fans and admirers one less chance to meet Clive at the convention and get their memorabilia signed. Days of the Dead takes place March 22nd through 24th, this weekend, 2024. Even though this event will already have passed by the time this episode comes out, we wanted to highlight this article because we are big fans of Clive Barker.
Yes. I wish I could meet Clive Barker. That would have been nice.
I didn't even know. I mean, like, I'm like an hour and a half drive from Chicago, but I didn't know anything about this just now. So.
Aw, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Scream 7. Neve Campbell's returning as Sidney Prescott in new movie from director Kevin Williamson. A huge Scream 7 update has been announced by Neve Campbell this afternoon, with Campbell revealing that she'll be back as Sidney Prescott in the upcoming Spyglass sequel. Additionally, original Scream scribe Kevin Williamson will direct the film. The upcoming Scream 7, which is currently untitled, was written by Guy Busick from a story by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick. You can check out Campbell's Instagram update below. The franchise has been mired in controversy in the past several months, with new series leads Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega both exiting the project. Barrera was fired, while it was subsequently announced that Ortega wouldn't be returning. In the wake of all that news, director Christopher Landon, Happy Death Day, also departed the project. Neve Campbell famously refused to return to Scream 6 due to a pay dispute, but it sounds like Spyglass came to her this time around with a much stronger offer. With Neve Campbell back on board and Williamson in the director's chair, Scream fans will likely be lured back into the saga despite the black cloud hanging over the proceedings after Barrera's unjust firing. Stay tuned for more on Untitled Scream 7 as we learn it.
All right. So I know we've had some talk about this in the Facebook group for sure. How do you guys feel about this update?
So did everybody, so when she got unjustly fired, these other people that are now gone, did they leave in her honor? Do we know? Like
Jenna Ortega tried to
Ortega.
say that she had like another project that she was working on, but it seems like they're pretty close and that she might have just said that, but was kind of also doing it in honor of her. But that's just like a, unfounded rumor, so I can't say for sure. But she tried to
And
say it was a
Christopher
scheduling
Landon.
conflict.
And Christopher Landon also departed the project. Like,
yeah, I'm guessing for him, he was just like, well, the two main stars are gone. I'm out of here.
and didn't she got let go for something she said on social media or something, right? She stood up for the war or something like that.
I don't know.
And I don't know how
yeah. Scream is not really, so.
Yeah, mine either. But still, then I don't know how I feel about Nev coming back just for money if it's not like a fair workplace. I don't know how I feel about that then.
Yeah. I do like Kevin Williamson, so I don't know. I think I'll see it just to see it, but somebody else mentioned
to support horror, but
yeah, someone else had mentioned in the group, like, I'll watch it on, streaming or some other source, but I'm not going to pay to, like, support it.
that seems fair. Like, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, I do like to go to the, like, yeah, all right, well, you'll get my money inadvertently. I'm not going to hand you my $8-10 directly. But I know I'll see, like, I see them all and then I complain about them. So, oh well,
Yeah.
I just think women, well, women need to support women. I just don't like, the sound of that, but whatever.
I do like that you do support the movies at the theater, Tammy. Like, even though you do seem to, like, hit a bunch of bad ones, but you still, you want to support horror. So
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, our next headline, I'm excited about this. Filming has begun on director Leigh Whannell's Wolfman movie for Halloween 2024. In the wake of The Invisible Man back in 2020, Leigh Whannell is re-teaming with Universal and Blumhouse to direct a new take on the Wolfman, and filming has begun. Christopher Abbott from Four Things has been cast in the titular role. We recently learned Leigh Whannell's Wolfman will howl its way into theaters October 25th, 2024. Wolfman stars Christopher Abbott as the man whose family is being terrorized by a lethal predator. Writers include Whannell and Corbett Tuck, as well as Lauren Schuker Blum and Rebecca Angelo. Jason Blum is producing the film. Ryan Gosling, Ken Cal, B. Securia, Mel Turner, and Whannell are executive producers. Wolfman is a Blumhouse and Motel Movies production. The project will mark Whannell's second monster movie and fourth directing collaboration with Blumhouse Productions, The Invisible Man, Upgrade, Insidious Chapter 3. In the wake of the failed Dark Universe, Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man has been the only real success story for the Universal Monsters brand, which has been struggling with recent box office flops, including the comedic Renfield and period horror comedy The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Giving him the keys to the castle once more seems like a wise idea, to say the least. Stay tuned for more on this new take on the Universal Monsters icon as we learn it. Okay, they didn't have to hate on Renfield or the Demeter, but
yeah, they're just saying they didn't make money.
Part of the dark universe or whatever, but I thought they were great. So
Last Voyage of the Demeter was like in my top 10 of the year last year. I thought that was outstanding. I would certainly not call it a flop. Like, what the heck?
no.
Well, money-wise, it was a flop.
Well, Renfield was cute. I liked
I liked it too, and I liked Renfield. It was fun as heck. But yeah, I know that The Invisible Man actually did really well money-wise. So that's what they're saying. Not that we care about that, but
I don't know. They expect all of their movies to be the Invisible Man level. You know, that was kind of prestige, I would think. You know, compared to if you're creating a universe like that one hit it way out of the park, I think.
yeah.
So.
Plus,
I know it didn't even really feel like a Universal monster, even. You know what I mean? It was so like updated.
Say,
yeah.
I thought it had much more mass appeal. Like, I feel like Demeter and Renfield is really gonna just draw horror fans. Maybe not maybe Renfield not so much. Might have had a little wider like Nicolas Cage audience or whatever, but like The Invisible Man, I think more was almost like a Marvel movie or something instead of a horror movie, you know? So
yeah. Well, I'm waiting with bated breath because Wolfman is my favorite Universal monster. So
well, I like The Mummy, but they ruined it with Tom Cruise. So
yeah. I didn't even see it. I was like, I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, no. It just looked like an action movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Not my jam at all.
Well, I hope this one's good.
Me too.
All right. Next up, we have Brandon Routh and Mina Suvari starring in Joseph Kahn's monster movie, Ick. A throwback to the 1980s creature features, Joseph Kahn's next movie is titled Ick, and Variety reports today that Brandon Routh and Mina Suvari will be leading the cast. Variety's report notes the film aims to evoke the timeless creature features of the 1980s with an ambitious arsenal of scares and comedy. The site also teases a blending of old school prosthetics, yay, and state-of-the-art visual effects. Joseph Kahn's Ick centers on Hank, played by Ralph, a high school science teacher who still pines for his childhood sweetheart, Savari. While discovering he may have a teenage daughter, Melina Weissman, Hank must grapple with a terrifying alien anomaly invading their small town. The film was written by Sam Lasky, Dan Kuntz, and Joseph Kahn. Ick is a movie that evokes primal fears about the world today, and best of all, it introduces a unique, mysterious monster. I'm thrilled that Interstellar has aligned to produce this modern creature feature that is challenging and escapist fun, Kahn says of the film. Joseph Kahn is the director of films including Torque, Bodied, and Detention.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, that does sound really cool. I hope it's everything they're claiming.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen Mina Suvari in a long time too.
I think she was in with the whole Harvey Weinstein thing is why she like left for a while, and now we're starting to see her kind of creep back in. So I'm happy about that.
She get like blacklisted or something.
Yep, well, I mean, that's her claim, and I believe it. So yeah.
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't we believe it after everyone?
Right.
Well, I didn't want to be
like, yeah, like I was there or anything, but
yeah,
yes, that's what she said. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because she was like everywhere, and then all of a sudden she wasn't. So makes sense to me. This sounds fun though. I'm really excited, and
yeah.
I like titles like Ick.
I like Dean Koontz. I don't know how many movies he's been behind, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Well, it says Dan Kuntz. Is that him? Is that the same?
Never mind.
Is that a typo?
It's got to be, right? I mean, my bad if it's not. If it's Dean Koontz, yay, as a writer. If it's Dan Koontz, my bad. Sorry, my brain's old. I hope it's Dean Koontz because I like him. If not, Dean Koontz, what are you doing with your time? You should be making movies.
I was trying to see if I could look it up, but I don't think I can look it up yet.
I think it's his son. Does he have a son?
Oh.
No.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I can't find the movie, so I'm not sure. Dang it. Now we have to wait. Find out if it's Dan or Dean. That's funny. Well, that concludes our haunting headlines. Thank you so much, Christine.
You're welcome.
Good job, Christine.
Yeah, you did
My
great.
job is in jeopardy. My job is in jeopardy.
No, it's not. We would just add a third.
Yeah.
Not replace anybody. Duh. All right. So, of course, I love you. So, again, since Christine's our... Aw. Stop, I'm trying to work here.
Okay, sorry.
So, again, Christine, we're just going to put you in the hot seat because that's what we like to do to our guests. Just nerve.
We like to squeeze them for everything we can get out of them. So, yeah.
There you go. So we're going to go ahead and ask you first if you've been watching any horror movies recently or doing any other horror related things, such as reading or going to cons or anything.
Okay. Well, most recently, we had spring break last week. And so my family, we went to Arkansas and stayed in a cabin. And I decided that was the perfect time to introduce the girls to Friday the 13th. So we watched the Friday the 13th movies up to 4. So the first 4, which in my opinion, that's fine. Just stop there. But it was fun. You know, we were in the woods. We're kind of isolated. It was good atmosphere to watch it in. And they thought it was really funny that the mom was the killer in the first one because they sort of know who Jason is from, you know, going to the Halloween store or whatever, you know, just pop culture.
Right.
And so they're like, well, wait a minute. And then in the second movie, he's got a sack on his head. And they're like, well, who's this? Like, where's the guy they're expecting? I'm like, oh, just wait till the next movie. He gets his mask. So that was fun. And they're not.
Hey, can I just ask real quick? So by the girls, you mean like your daughters?
Sorry, yes. My daughter.
How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old daughter.
Awesome. Oh yeah, it's definitely time. Good for you, Mom.
Yeah. Not.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no. Not my favorite franchise by any stretch, but it was the right time for it, right place for it. So
For sure.
What did they think?
Yeah.
I mean, they just thought it was cheesy. They enjoyed making fun of it. I mean, that's what I do when I watch it. I just make fun of the stupid decisions that people make, and they're not really scary to me at all, and they weren't to them. So we had a good time with it for sure.
That's nice. My daughter's 19 and she always just poo-poos any of those older movies I try to show her. She's like, this looks old. And then she just like looks at her phone.
Well, I had to love, like, they loved like Ralph, the old guy that warns, you know, you're gonna die. It can't like they love that. I'm like, I love that. Like they should have had him in every movie. He should never have died. But it's just like the tropes that repeat, like it was fun. And then I would say that, of course, I watched Tourist Trap tonight, which was a lot of fun. So I highly recommend that. But I also watched a movie, and I wrote a little thing so I wouldn't like forget what I was talking about. A movie called She Will on YouTube. It's a 2022 film. It's got Alice Krieg, Rupert Everett, Malcolm McDowell, and it's directed by Charlotte Colbert Colbert, I don't know how you say it, in her directorial debut, and it's produced by Dario Argento. And,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, have either of you seen this?
Yeah, I saw it.
Right, Jessica, and it came up. I think it just came up on our last episode that's not released yet of the Horrorcast because of Malcolm McDowell, right?
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah, we did bring that up. Yeah, I love Malcolm McDowell and Alice Krieg.
Yeah, maybe it was on the Rotten Roundtable. That might be out, but this movie came up, and you said you saw it, right?
Yeah, I saw it.
He was in because you said Mark was trying to say how he takes all these bad roles, and you said he was in She Will.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
You guys had a conversation about
And that
Oh,
was
your
from
memory's so good.
like the one that's out.
Yeah, it like just released, I think, the Rotten Roundtable.
Okay, all right, I'll have to listen for that. Yeah, I really.
We were trying to decide who would, because they're going to make a Halloween TV show. We brought up, and we were trying to decide who would be a good Loomis, and then I guess Loomis was in the Rob Zombie Halloween, right? Or Malcolm McDowell was the Loomis in the Rob Zombie Halloween. I haven't seen it, so I guess the only conclusion we came to is that it shouldn't be Malcolm McDowell. But me and Jessica both tried to stick up for Malcolm McDowell, but Mark was like, no way. So
I mean, he was fine. It was fine. But I like him in general. But yeah. So that has been everything that I've. Other than that, I've kind of fallen into a Dune rabbit hole. So that's kind of taken up some time lately.
I think you and millions of others. So.
Yeah, I'm sure my mom is in that same boat. She loves Dune, and she's just been waiting for the next one to come out. I think she's seen the first one like 10 times. I don't even know.
Oh my God. Your mom sounds like the coolest person ever.
She's pretty cool.
Sounds like it.
In theory. Kidding. Love you, Mom. My mom watches the YouTubes, so better be nice. But she really appreciates Tammy.
Yeah, well, I mean, who doesn't? But I've never seen Dune or any of the Dunes, or I don't know. I don't know why. I guess it just, I don't know.
I know, but I rewatched the 1984 David Lynch one, and it's so bad.
I've been afraid to return to it because I liked it when I was a kid,
I did too. But it's funny. There's a lot to laugh at about it, especially Sting. Like, why was Sting in that movie? Why pugs? Like, there were pugs in that movie. Like, why?
Because they're otherworldly.
I guess so.
And they're bug eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh, it's awesome. Well, Tammy, would you like to do your Fright Bites?
Oh, hold on, because you were supposed to be next, so hang on a second.
Well, I can go next.
Nope, I got it, because I don't have a lot to say, and it seems like you do. So all I have is I had to rewatch 1408 and Paranormal Activity for the Horrorcast, which will be the next one coming out. So that was fun. Stay tuned. Here we all had to say about those. And my only other two to watch are very unfortunate ones. I watched Frogman. We lied to you, everyone, when we tried to tell you it's like a Lovecraftian nightmare or whatever. We lied to you. I'll fully admit that. And then I watched Romy, which it was
What's
like
that?
That's that one that Mark put on his Plex. That's the like smart house that goes evil,
Okay, I've heard about it. Yeah.
I think it's a Tubi original because I think I saw it on Tubi, and I guess it's okay for a Tubi original. It does pick up at the end, but it's almost 2 hours long, and it really super duper does not need to be. And there was a twist in it that did get me. I did not see that coming, so I appreciate that. But overall, it's like, it's fine. Like, if you're looking for something, it's not the worst thing you could watch, but don't like seek it out, I would say, I guess. But yeah, and that's it for me.
Nice.
Take it away, Jessica.
Yeah, so I watched Byzantium from 2012, which follows residents of a coastal town that learn with deathly consequences the secret shared by the two mysterious women who have sought shelter at a rundown hotel. And I had watched this for my guest spot on The Horror Returns, their female empowerment March Madness episode. Somebody added this to the bracket, and I loved it. And I had never heard of it.
So good. It would have been a good one for us to cover someday.
I know. Well, this whole episode is just movies that we're going to cover or should cover because it's a female empowerment episode. But yeah, it was really good. And it's from Neil Jordan, who I love, who did Interview with the Vampire, Company of Wolves. He also did In Dreams, which was one I really liked growing up. So I was really stoked when after I watched it and I was like, oh, it's Neil Jordan, sweet. And I got to tell my mom about it because it's right up her alley. So hopefully she watches it soon. So I definitely recommend it. And when I was on The Horror Returns, everybody on the show, I think there was 2 people who hadn't seen it, but everyone else had seen it at some point, and they were all like rooting for it. And they're like,
Awesome.
you guys have to watch this movie. It's so good. Like even the guys. I was like, wow, this movie has some cred. I just like never even heard of it.
It's very underappreciated, kind of like Tourist Trap, I think. Like it's super good, but nobody ever talks about it. So.
And then I watched Frogs from 1972 because it's on YouTube right now, everybody, if you want to go catch frogs. And this follows a group of helpless victims who are celebrating a birthday on an island estate, crawling with killer amphibians, birds, insects, and reptiles. And this stars a young Sam Elliott. Hubba hubba. He can get it then and now. Still hot.
Yeah.
And an older Ray Milland, who was...
I love him so much, sorry.
His character he did a great job at playing his character in this role. We mostly are just getting like these menacing close-up shots of reptiles and then cut to like a close-up of someone's face to represent that they're being murdered by gangs of animals. But I really like the premise that the animals are revolting against the humans for polluting the earth. And I actually really enjoyed it for what it was. I am also a super like herpetology nerd, insect nerd, bird nerd. So I loved all these like beautiful close-up shots of all these different animals. I was like, I don't care if I don't even see anyone actually die. And actually the acting in it was pretty good for what it was. So I think if you're in the mood for something like that, go in knowing what it is, that you would enjoy it. But I did want to say, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think in the 70s, they took disaster movies and these animal attack movies much more seriously. Like, I don't think they were quite as camp as they're considered now. Like, that was true entertainment back in the day. So,
yeah. Wow. I was just like, oh, look at all the cute little froggies. I want them.
But we had tons of there was killer bees and killer bears, and that one that Dave brought up about the killer, like lions, man, animals were dangerous in the 70s. So.
Oh, the one he brought up about the lion, the roar, that sounded, I'm like, I need to find that. That sounded really freaky. I watched one last summer that was like all the animals of the forest were against the people, and it was because of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think environment or the sun. So something like that was like affecting all the animals in the forest and killing people.
Nice.
Good.
I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did just want to do a shout out to our friend Will, or AKA Armored Foe. He's probably already seen this, but if he hasn't, Will, you need to watch this because he's also a herpetology nerd. So I think he would like it. I got to see Lady Snowblood from 1973 in an old hipster theater out here in Portland. And that was really fun. And they played like old school Japanese trailers like Hausu in the beginning instead of current, updated trailers. And they were
experience.
Yeah, they were hilarious. And we're in this theater with a bunch of like cinephiles. But they're also like hipster Portland people, so they're like kind of cool, but also kind of like weird. But everyone's like losing their shit whenever like blood geysers are going off. So that was a really fun experience. And this was Quentin Tarantino's main inspiration for Kill Bill. And you could totally tell, and he uses like the main theme song from this and Kill Bill and stuff. And it was really good. I was so excited to finally see it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, you should.
Okay.
It's really cool. I mean, I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but it was really cool to see. And the theater is going to be playing Miss 45 soon. So I want to try and go and see that if I can. So, awesome. But yeah. Those are my watches. Got some fun ones.
Hey.
To get briefly into our Echoes from the Abyss, we don't have any like new listener comments about any episodes previous or this one. Of course, I don't think we really posted for this one asking people, so whoops.
Yeah.
But I thought that Dr. Schockbecker would appreciate if we brought up a correction because he's been going to all of our posts, where we're posting the episode that he was on and adding this correction. So he's clearly a little embarrassed by it. So I thought I would insert the correction here because if we had, not released the episode yet and he had realized it beforehand, I could have edited the episode before we released it. But he keeps saying that at the 10-minute or so mark, he said that Rennie Harlan was the cameraman who was mauled on the set of 1981's Roar. He was wrong. It was Jan de Bont. Gonna look at Tammy. Does that sound like I said it
That's
correctly?
what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he said apologies. So he obviously doesn't need to apologize for anything. He's a freaking encyclopedia.
Right.
But if anybody listens to our Death Proof episode and they're thinking, oh, Dr. Schockbecker doesn't know anything. He said Rennie Harlan. Well, in your face, he does know. He made the correction before you could give him shit. So that's all I have. My own, or Dave's own echo from the abyss.
That's all right. We forgive him any wrongdoings.
Exactly.
Doing all right, Christine?
Yeah.
You having fun?
Yeah.
Is it what you thought it would be?
It's great. It's what I thought it would be. Yeah.
Right, ladies, are we ready?
Ready.
All right. Now for the main event, we will be reviewing the book Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is our second book review on the podcast, so here we go. Little synopsis of the book. Inspired by Ted Bundy, the novel flips the script on serial killer stories, focusing on the women impacted. Masterfully blending elements of psychological suspense and true crime, Jessica Knoll, author of the best-selling novel Luckiest Girl Alive, and the writer behind the Netflix adaptation starring Mila Kunis, delivers a new and exhilarating thriller in Bright Young Women. The book opens on a Saturday night in 1978, hours before a soon-to-be infamous murder descends upon a Florida sorority house with deadly results. The lives of those who survive, including sorority president and key witness Pamela Schumacher, are forever changed. Across the country, Tina Cannon is convinced her missing friend, it's more than her friend, it's her partner, was targeted by the man papers refer to as the All-American Sex Killer, and that he struck again. Determined to find justice, the two join forces as their search for answers leads to a final shocking confrontation. So I'll just go over some of the main characters real quick. We have Pamela Schumacher, so the book kind of goes back and forth, I think, kind of telling the story from Pamela's point of view and then also Tina Cannon's. So Pamela Schumacher was the sorority president and survivor of the brutal attack. She also saw the killer actually leave the house. She's the only person that did. Tina Cannon, who is the partner of Ruth, who is determined to find the killer. Ruth Wachowski, a 25-year-old lost young woman who becomes friends, then later lovers with Tina after meeting at a grief support group that Tina was co-hosting. She later becomes a victim of the defendant. And that's a choice that the author chooses to never say his name. She only refers to him as the defendant, which I think is great because the idea is here to keep the spotlight on the women. You guys agree? I mean, they never,
Totally.
we assume this is Ted Bundy, but nowhere does ever say that, And this is a novel. This is not a true story, but it is a true story. So
at first I was like, this is kind of weird. Why do they keep saying the defendant? I want to know what the guy's name is. And then I was like, oh, I get it. Because that's kind of like the whole reason for this book even existing. So I think it's really cool that she did that.
Yeah.
I do too. It's a definite choice, but it really works here. And she really drives her point home of what we're going for here. And then Denise Andorra and Robbie Shepard are the two sorority girls who are killed that night in 1978 at the sorority house, but certainly not all, he has many more victims than those two, but these two are highlighted in a very personal way, which I really enjoyed. Carl, a reporter who befriends Pamela and Tina, only to later betray them. And I also included Ruth's mother, Shirley, who's like a master manipulator, and Ruth's dad, a closeted homosexual who later dies of a heart attack, which the family says is after finding out that Ruth is lesbian, which they didn't use against her. But obviously, I mean, I highly doubt that's why he had a heart attack. I have a feeling if he was really a closet, being married to Ruth's mother, Shirley, and actually being a closeted homosexual his whole life, I'm sure he had a lot of things to be stressed out about, not just his daughter,
Yeah.
All right, so we're all about the deep dive here, but this is as simple of an outline as I could make. So let's go through it and talk about whatever you would like to bring up. I will later discuss the themes in more detail, and I have some questions suggested by the publisher for book groups covering this book that I thought were good. So I picked some that I thought would be good for us to discuss. Cool beans?
Wow. You're so smart and thorough.
Yeah.
You did such a good job last time. I felt a lot of pressure to make this good. So, all right, here we go. So, and seriously, guys, interrupt me whenever you want. I mean, I condensed a pretty big book into a couple paragraphs. So, the novel features 3 distinct plot lines, each occurring at a different point in time: 1974, 1978 to 1979, and 2021. In winter 1974, a young woman named Ruth meets a woman named Tina at a complex grief support group. Ruth is an unhappy 25-year-old woman living in a suburb near Seattle, while Tina is the beautiful and glamorous young widow of a very wealthy man. Ruth and Tina form a close friendship and eventually a romantic relationship, in which Tina encourages Ruth to become more independent and distance herself from her toxic family. Ruth and Tina move in together, but in July 1974, Ruth vanishes from a crowded beach. Tina becomes convinced that Ruth was abducted, especially because several young women recently disappeared and a serial killer may be operating in the area. However, Ruth's family members who oppose Ruth's sexual orientation and her relationship with Tina don't think Ruth was harmed and don't press for an investigation. Tina does investigate, eventually becoming convinced that Ruth's disappearance is linked to a series of other murders in Colorado and Utah. So you guys want to stop there and just kind of talk about them for a little bit? Maybe what you thought of them? What did you guys think of Tina at first?
I feel like I kind of love Tina right from the get-go. Just like her, I'm kind of drawn to those personalities in general, which is why I'm friends with Tammy.
But those personalities.
Yeah, those like really strong personalities, you know what I mean? I love it. So right away I really enjoyed Tina's character. Pamela is the one that I was kind of a little more lukewarm on. She was a little too like particular, and obviously that's supposed to be her character, right? So, and you kind of, or at least I kind of grew to love her because of the fight that she has in her, and really because of her eventual friendship with Tina and the way that their friendship really blossoms and they support each other, make each other stronger. I thought that was kind of like one of the more compelling friendships I've ever read in a book. And I don't really read books like this in general. You know, I'm a big like fantasy nerd and like horror nerd. So I don't typically read just like fiction, but so I don't know if that, but I thought it was well written in general. The relationships were well written, and I wrote too, this was kind of like my overall feel of the book, but I feel like she did a really good, the writer Jessica Knoll, I felt like she did a good job at adding enough detail to really like kind of flesh it out and make this feel like a retelling of like an actual event, but not so much that it just feels like a fictional novel. Like it feels more based in reality.
Documentary or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little confused as to why the chapters for Ruth were not titled Tina because it just seems like Tina was the bigger personality, and I don't know. It was that kind of confused me. Also, Tina is living, Pamela is living, and I didn't quite understand why we only have two title names in the title, one being Ruth, kind of confused me. But I did love their relationship, and how there was that strong woman to kind of pull Ruth out of her shell, living at home and just kind of, not sure what to do with herself because her marriage was over and everything. And yeah, so I
Maybe it was a choice to highlight because she is trying to like highlight the victims, maybe, and because Tina is such a she's going to be sprinkled in the book throughout the she lasts the entire story. Maybe it was a conscious choice to give Ruth the name just while she was alive. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. It just maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the Ruth chapters personally. I felt like really invested in them, especially knowing like what's gonna happen to Ruth. I mean, not knowing in detail, but like basically knowing. And they didn't have to go into detail, but yeah, I think probably because the whole point of this is to focus on the victims and Ruth being a bright young woman who had opportunity in a future. And like one of her last thoughts before she was killed was, was he looking for somebody like full of life? Like, why couldn't he find me a year ago when, I was depressed and didn't have anything to look forward to? I felt like that line really hit me, but I think that that's probably something that families of victims have to think about over and over every time more media comes out about them or a new adaptation on Netflix or something. So I liked it, and I kind of like too that like we didn't get Ruth's point of view throughout the story. It was more towards the end that the Ruth chapters started coming in. I felt like it was kind of a nice way to tie everything together, especially with them ending in her final resting place.
And it really was like those later chapters where she was coming into her own, really
Yeah.
enjoy her life, had plans for the future, and stood up to her family. And it was just, yeah, she really found her voice toward the end.
She became the embodiment of a bright young woman, like literally. I tell you what, and I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but that ending, yes, we're not only bringing up these victims here, but in the end, we get walked through the killing of a victim, like step by step, by minute, and what happens. I'm sure I just never seen that before, and I've watched it. I listened to like some of my favorite podcasts are true crime podcasts. I watch lots of true crime documentaries, and I know people try to touch on the victims. I think that's kind of where things are turning toward. I've never been walked through a killing like that. And also, she wasn't killed alone. She, was tied up, and another victim was brought in, and you actually experienced the death in extreme detail of two bright young women. And to end the book like that, or well, almost end the book like that, was just like, oh my God, it was just such a stat. I guess I was so in love with her by that, just cared so much about her by that time. To have that happen I think that was a really good layout for Jessica to choose to write this. I was a little lukewarm on Pamela also at the beginning. I think I was a little lukewarm on the book kind of at the beginning. I'm like, oh no, is there going to be, it kind of felt like she took a lot of opportunity to just shove that, I don't want to say men are bad, but kind of a little bit at the beginning. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope this isn't going the way of the last book that we wrote. But I feel like I quickly, or not that we covered,
reviewed.
and
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of quickly turned away from that. But also, I agree with you. Like, I think I was a little lukewarm on Pamela because in real life, I would be friends with like a Ruth or a Tina, and like my paths probably would have never crossed with a Pamela. But I also like really like those first scenes where we get to see Pamela just interacting with all of her friends on what would be the last day of their lives, and just how women, all different kinds of women, are still just people, with lives. And even though we're all different, like they were also, I mean, it's not who I was necessarily, but you have these sorority girls in the 70s who were on that cusp of women finally getting to have lives, and they're snuffed out. And for absolutely no reason, and in horrible ways, like the hairspray bottle and stuff. Like, oh, it's like, oh my God. So I warmed up, but at the beginning I was a little like, it took me a little bit to connect, I think, with the story. But then once I did, I was like 100% invested and couldn't wait to find out. Even though I kind of knew where things were going, I just loved that whole Tina and Ruth story, and I loved hearing all about it. And I think wounded people are attracted to wounded people, so I just really loved what they both, yes, Tina was vibrant and all the other stuff, but I think Ruth did a lot for her too. So
and
I just really,
you really do feel the loss of someone that feels real when Ruth is murdered. Like that's, we've kind of gone along with her and seen her grow, and we really feel like we know her, and then this happens. And I think that's the part of what the author's trying to get through, is the loss of life, like the real tragic loss of life versus the defendant who the judge complimented. I mean, I don't know, it's such a bizarre but the judge, at the end, and this is factual, laments that Bundy went the way he did, because he seemed like a bright young man. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I know this. I also think too, what this book calls to light is all the victims, including the ones that are left behind, because we see the devastation that this does to, like, I think it totally, even though Pamela and Tina are both alive, their lives were completely changed by this and will never be the same. So there's all kinds of victims, and I think you're right, Jessica, you said about like what the family has to relive all the time, and I just think people don't tend to think about that kind of stuff.
Right. So. I know, even just what the judge said in real life to Ted Bundy and in this story, I mean, you could have like internal dialogue and be like, wow, they could have gone a different way. Like, they seem sharp, they seem bright, like they could have had a different life, and you can like meditate on that. But to say it out loud in front of people that are affected by what happened, and after the horrible things he did, it's like, how are you so completely thoughtless? It's crazy.
Well, and we find out too is he was never really all that accomplished. He lied about a lot of that stuff and faked his, certifications, and lied about who he was, and failed out of college, and more than once. So he was never quite that bright. He was
he was a good bullshitter.
Yes.
Well, the judge didn't seem very bright either, so.
No, right? Yeah, exactly. All right, so in January 1978, Pamela is an ambitious pre-law student at Florida State University and is the president of her sorority house. One night, Pamela wakes to the sound of an intruder and briefly glimpses a man fleeing from the house. The man has brutally attacked 4 young women living in the house, and 2 of them, including Pamela's closest friend Denise, die. In the aftermath of the attack, police begin to fixate on a man named Roger, Denise's ex-boyfriend, as the main suspect, though Pamela insists that the man she saw wasn't Roger. Tina learns about the attack in Florida and meets up with Pamela. She explains to Pamela about a man referred to only as the defendant. He's connected to multiple murders in Utah and Colorado, but escaped from a Colorado jail in December 1977 and has been at large ever since. Tina thinks he's likely responsible for the attacks in Florida, and he's also convinced that he killed Ruth. When she shows Pamela an image of the defendant, Pamela immediately confirms that he's the man she saw in the sorority house. With the assistance of a journalist named Carl, Pamela and Tina try to connect the defendant to the crimes in Florida. So I'll stop right here. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how Pamela is treated by the authorities and stuff, and just how like messed up the handling of the crime scene was, and like how she wasn't able to get that grant to have the sorority house cleaned up and fixed because these women had relations possibly with this man?
That really burned.
Exactly.
I knew when she said she was going to apply for that, I'm like, you're not going to get it. They're going to say it was, there's some reason that it doesn't fit the scenario and you're not going to get that money. Yeah, I mean, I expected it for a book about this time period, that there would, and in Florida, that there would be some, some idiocy going on. So it was as I expected. I didn't feel like she went overboard with her examples of men being stupid to women. It felt fairly real for the time period to me. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, and yeah, it was so frustrating when you could tell she's just like regrets ever bringing up that she thought that person resembled Roger for an instant, and it throws off like so many years. She has to like make up for it for so long, just because they got totally stuck on that one little detail and they just wanted to be able to tie it up in a nice pretty bow and not have to worry about it anymore instead of putting the work in. So yeah, very frustrating. And I think
and another murder happening,
exactly.
They're on the wrong scent,
Yeah.
Well,
and that's truly the worst part.
She wasn't like saying I thought it was him, because they were kind of questioning her, like, why weren't you more afraid, or why did you go towards him, or whatever? And she's like, because for a second I thought it was Denise's boyfriend, but I right away realized that it wasn't, because she said that overhead light was on. So yeah, but they just wanted to close. The sheriff was up for re-election or whatever, and they of course just wanted to get that case closed, so they took that Roger little nugget and ran with it. Yeah, which opened him up to continue killing for years and years after that.
Yeah, terrible.
All right.
Another aspect of Pamela that I thought was interesting was showing how she was going to follow her boyfriend to a substandard law school, because he didn't get in, but she did, and she wanted, her life plan was they were going to get married eventually, and I really liked that, because I mean that also felt very real for the time. No matter how brilliant someone was, I could see that decision being made, and so I loved it when that that turned around and she's like, you know what, no, I'm gonna go to Columbia, right?
Yeah, Columbia.
Yeah, you're right. And it did make her feel more real as a character too. She's not just this like kick-ass superhero, even though she's so much smarter than her boyfriend. She had to like grow as a person to come to that place. And I'm sure her best friend being murdered probably didn't hurt, because it's like, okay, I really only live once. I better do the best. And she's also a perfectionist, so it makes sense too, that she wouldn't settle for less, when she grew up a little bit.
She would not have been happy if she went to that other school.
It's kind of great that you never know how you would react if you were in Pamela's situation and, actually saw the victims, and, she kind of beat herself up because she felt like she didn't realize how hurt these girls were at first. And I think she felt a little guilty that maybe she should have helped them more. She just thought Denise was sleeping, and I think she was just in shock was the problem. But instead she found it deep down in herself to, turn that around and like make that her life mission. Really, she still went into law, but she really used that to like kind of get more involved in these kind of situations. So I thought that was pretty great, because it would be just as easy, especially if you were such a type A personality as she was, to just like shut down. And she had a guy waiting to marry her. She could have just said F it, and shut down and just went and got married and had kids and buried the whole thing and started a life where nobody knew who she was, which would have been easier to do back then in the 70s, you know, or into the 80s, because there's no internet and all that. She could have very easily, you know, just went and started her life all over, and instead she chose to make it like her life cause. So I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, because her ultimate the type of lawyer she becomes is someone who does mediation with family mediation, because her thought process is these monsters are created, you know, they're made, they don't just spawn, you know, they come from broken families. And that's really the only, I think, I guess, sympathetic thing that she has toward the defendant, is the fact that he may have been a product of incest. He came from a family where he was certainly abused. And, you know, that does not excuse anything. But like, she took that, and her thought process was, I want to try to make families more stable and better, so we don't have people like this happening, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually kind of smart the way that Pamela's written, because, you know, she is so detail oriented and she's so observant. And if that character, you know, if Pamela wasn't that character, then she wouldn't have been as successful, you know, at getting the defendant, you know, tried and everything. And I think it's because that character is like that, even though she's kind of off-putting. That's the kind of character you need in that role, in order to like kind of drive home this whole idea of like bright young women, you know, getting the job done.
Where do you guys stand on that idea of you're not born that way, you're made?
I personally think there's both. I think there's elements of both, and kind of, you know, somebody could be born a certain way, and if they have a very nurturing environment, maybe everything's fine and normal, but if not, maybe things go the other way. So I don't know, but I feel like it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I totally agree. Everyone's just so different, and people just respond to environments and people and everything just so differently, which I think you really understand once you have kids, you know, like.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, sometimes it amazes me, some of the issues that my daughter's gone through with having grown up in such a different environment. I'm like, how can you still have these issues? Like, you're coddled and spoiled and you're not abused or any of this other stuff, you know, nothing's holding you back, and you still had, you know, go through these same like processes that I went through when I was your age and stuff. So it's just crazy how different people are.
Oh, that's so true. Okay. All right, so I already said, with the assistance of a journalist named Carl, Pamela and Tina try to connect the defendant to the crimes in Florida. They go to Colorado and learn that the defendant may have already been planning attacks at Florida State University before he escaped. However, Florida police are slow to act on this information, and the defendant kills a 12-year-old girl in another Florida town. A few days after this final murder, he's finally arrested, connected to the murders at Florida State University. Pamela later plays a key role in the defendant's trial, providing eyewitness testimony. Carl disappoints Pamela and Tina, focusing on his own career and financial gain. He works to gain the defendant's trust in order to write about him. That broke my heart when he did that.
Yeah.
Like, I almost thought Carl was, because she doesn't say, but I almost thought Carl and Pamela got married, because she does say earlier that she has a daughter and that she is married, but she doesn't tell you till after the Carl stuff. I was like, oh, because she meets Carl and sleeps with him, and I'm like, yay, she's getting away from what's his face, the dorky guy she's supposed to marry, you know? And I'm like, yay, and then Carl turns out to be not good, and I was like, oh no. I mean, she still found a good husband, happy for her, but I was like, yay, we have a good guy, a good guy in the story. No, but it wasn't the case.
No. Yeah, that really hurt hurt me as well. But yeah, he's just out to make a buck for himself and make a name for himself, and it was easier to do that by ingratiating himself to the defendant than to look for the truth, I guess. So.
Yeah, it was
It's
really
just,
lame because he seemed so invested in getting to the truth, and they were
and
kind of
he
like the
seems like a
three
feminist.
amigos.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and just
But
some of the remarks that he made, just like he really cared about the women, that were murdered. And yeah, that one kind of threw me a little bit. I was like, did they really need to go there? We couldn't have like one good guy in the story,
right, that's
but
what I was. Yes, I know.
well, that's okay,
But
I guess.
I don't
Well,
know too, though. I think you're a much different person in your late teens and early 20s than you are in your 30s and 40s. And maybe he was truly like that at first, but then he saw the lure of money and what his career could be and just chose that path.
That's
Where
very
Tina and
true.
Pamela really chose to dig in their heels and get in the dirt and try to get stuff changed. You know. Pamela could have totally capitalized on her. I mean, you're getting into the 80s here. She could have wrote a book and made a ton of money about her experiences or something like that. Went on the talk show circuit and probably made a lot of money from what she had been through. And, you know, she went a different way. So,
there's actually a line in that at the end of the book, towards the end of the book, where she says that she didn't do interviews even with the good ones, even with the good people, because she didn't want her story to be repackaged later by, then she'd lose control of her story, and it could be someone else could tell it totally differently, and she didn't want.
Hmm.
And I that really ties in, I think, to Jessica Knoll's. One of her inspirations for this book was the Netflix documentary about the Ted Bundy tapes. And
Yeah.
what
mhm.
interesting is they're repackaging the same old lies about Bundy. Like they didn't go and clean up some of the stuff that we can see now, or like, no, he wasn't that brilliant. Yes, he did lie on his records and things like that. And she's like, how can we have something that just came out and they haven't done that? And so, it was kind of the same thing. You just don't know where this, your once your tale is out, someone else can take it and repackage it and tell lies with it. Like you just lose control. So
That's true.
Yeah. I thought that was really smart too when she says that in the book, Pamela. Yeah.
I know that Jessica Knoll had a real issue with like the Netflix documentary or these documentaries that are coming out and casting these handsome Hollywood actors like he's someone to be revered, instead of just what he really was.
Yeah. I remember we kind of talked about that briefly when the Dahmer show came out. I just felt so guilty watching it because I was like,
Right.
wow, this
Yeah.
is a good show. Wait, this like actually happened and the people are still alive, who were connected to victims of his, and it's just really messed up. And also, oh, what's that actor's name? I can't think of it right now.
oh
Ah.
oh
Oh
Is
my God.
it
just put
Evan
her
something? I don't know.
production
Right,
on.
post-production note. But you know who I'm talking about, the guy who played Dahmer. It's like, why would you
Okay, right. Evan Peters. Evan
Evan
Peters.
Peters? But yeah, like putting him in that role, I felt like was such a big issue. And yeah, I don't know. It just felt weird and like poor taste.
But the series was really good.
It,
I mean, I agree with you 100. That's like where it's like you
it could
know.
it especially because it was Ryan Murphy, right? Like a Ryan Murphy production. It could have been a lot more garish. They did not go there, and they could, and he could have,
Yeah.
and has done that, like in American Horror Story and stuff. So,
Oh yeah.
uh, I actually came away from that docudrama, very sympathetic toward his father and his
Hmm.
the book, and I had to get that and read it because I was like, I just felt such compassion for his father because he, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another kind of victim, right? Like, I can't imagine. I have 3 kids, and they're each as different as could possibly be. I can't imagine if one of them did something like that. The spotlight would, of course, go on me or their dad. I don't know, but how would you feel? And like, how do you handle that? Especially if you really feel like you really did try to do everything that you could do for this child, which I believe his dad feels like he did do. But his dad also admits some mistakes he feels like he made because, you
Oh,
know, he did move away from him and kind of leave him there and stuff like that. But I believe he was already formed into who he was going to be by that time anyway.
but like getting back to the handsome actor playing, so like the Zac Efron Ted Bundy, I've not seen that one, but
I
that
haven't either.
just the headline of it did strike me as why are we putting Zac Efron in this role? Like it really seems to glamorize, and he really was not. He was a normal looking guy. He really was not
He wasn't that hot.
Reynolds or anything by any stretch.
No.
No, he
I
wasn't even
agree.
70s hot, okay? Like, I feel like I can judge on that, you know? We were just talking about Sam Elliott, and now that's 70s hot, but no, Ted Bundy was not. But I think he must have had some kind of a charisma,
Oh yeah.
I mean, he did make these women go, you know, willingly with him. My son, my two my oldest kids are all growing out on their own, but my son Landon, who's still 15 and is with me like half the week, now when I leave him, I'm like, okay, Landon, if someone comes and says they need you to help find their dog, they do not need that. It's a joke, but it's like, I always still tease him about that. So
Okay, like as women, as an adult woman, I'm still just like Pamela. Do you remember the scene in the book where she's driving through Florida and she stops to go to the bathroom on the side of the road and
yes,
at night, and there's a guy there, and he's like, "Can I help you?" And she's like, "No, thank you." And then and then she's like, "Why am I thanking this person?"
Yeah.
Or she basically tells him to move along, and he does, and she's like, maybe I just fought off a shark here, like you're supposed to fight, and you're supposed, but I think women were so just conditioned to assume the best intent and or just be polite.
Be
That's just
polite.
the response. Be
do
polite.
do either of you listen to My Favorite Murder, or am I the only one that listens to that? Their tagline is "fuck politeness," like trying to get women, because so many women end up being murdered and stuff because we're polite. We're like conditioned to be polite, and it's so true. I still do it, even though I try to not consciously do it. I do. I think it's just like ingrained in us.
And then
Totally.
preyed upon that with he would wear a cast, he would do things sometimes to make himself look even more like maybe helpless.
Pitiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I guess I want to see the good in people. I try to see the good in people. I think I'm getting smarter now that I'm 55, but I think for most of my life, I just automatically gave people the benefit of the doubt. If somebody comes up to me with a cast on their arm, I should help them. You know what I mean? And I've learned, I think. But for the longest time, I think that's just our go-to. That's who we are as women and what's expected of us.
Yeah, I'm dumb, polite, and like assume that everybody is as good as they can be, so I'm doomed.
Oh, why can't people? I don't get it. Why can't everybody just be like that? I'm like that, but a lot of people aren't. So
Yeah. Raina's obsessed with true crime. Maybe she listens to that podcast you listen to, but she is very smart and thinks that she's going to be murdered at all times. So, and she is not polite. So I think at the very least she'll
well,
be okay.
let's all try to be more like Raina.
Yeah.
Go, girl. All right, moving on.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. The defendant is convicted of many murders in multiple states and is executed in Florida in 1989. Pamela becomes a successful lawyer, married, and has a daughter. She and Tina remain close, which I loved. For years, the two continued trying to find out information about Ruth. In 2021, Pamela receives information from a doctor treating Carl, who has dementia. Carl has revealed that he met with the defendant and recorded additional information. The doctor, who knows that Pamela was a survivor of the sorority attack, wants Pamela to know. After learning about Carl's claims, Pamela goes to Florida and meets with him. She decides to track down the additional tape recordings he's referring to and learns that the tapes were used in the investigation into Ruth's disappearance. The case was eventually closed without a conviction, so the recordings became available to Ruth's family. Her sister-in-law and former lover, Rebecca, obtained the tapes and hid them. Because Tina was Ruth's domestic partner, she and Pamela are able to take the tapes back from Rebecca. They listen to the tapes in which the defendant confesses to abducting and murdering Ruth and describes where he buried her. Pamela and Tina plant ferns, which grow different colors depending on the soil content, which I thought was fascinating, and attempt to determine the precise location of Ruth's body so that they can finally lay her to rest. So, thoughts?
I mostly liked the ending. It all felt very like natural and realistic, except I don't care how polite Ruth is. I don't see her leaving with the defendant to go help him with his boat or whatever. Although her line, they did include that line where, one of her last thoughts was, I couldn't be rude to two people in one day within a 24-hour period of time because I had just let my mother down. And I was like, oh God, like I do actually kind of get that logic, but to like get in a car with him and leave was like, even back in the 70s, I'm like, red flag.
Yeah.
So that was I feel like that's the only thing in the whole book that really was kind of like unrealistic to me.
But it happened to somebody. I mean, two people he lured away.
Yeah.
On
That's
the
the truth. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, maybe we were rude to our mother and then we just couldn't be and we just go. I mean,
yeah.
I can't say I would. I mean, I don't think I would, but
I mean, she just seems smarter than that. I probably would have done it because I'm dumb, but but no, kind of getting to know Ruth's character, it didn't seem like she would have gone and done that, but she was in a good mood, but she was also like waiting for somebody, so that also made it seem kind of like, why are you leaving when you're like literally trying to find somebody at the lake right now?
Well, I mean, that's true. That really did happen to somebody, but I guess we'll probably never know the true victims' backstories. And I think maybe Jessica just wanted to include it in the book and had to come up with some kind of a backstory. I agree. And I was so heartbroken because Ruth didn't go like right away willingly. Like she kind of had an internal dialogue with herself a little bit, maybe not as much as and it was kind of like a last minute like, oh, fuck it, I'll just do this real quick. And then I think she was going to meet Tina, right? I think is what she was doing.
Yeah.
So it was just it's like, you can make how quickly life can turn just based on one little decision, So it was just, oh, I hated it because I loved her so much. And I mean, I knew from page one this was going to happen to her, but still it was just like, I don't want her. Yeah. But I mean, then, he got Ruth and then immediately went got another girl the same exact way, like within an hour of each other. So, and those are just the ones we know about. I mean, obviously he was prepared. He'd probably done something like that before. I mean, he had his whole costume ready to go, so that's just happened to, I think guys, just from my own experience, I think they have some kind of a radar or a sense for women that are broken in some way, which Ruth definitely was. I think it's happened to me. I always like to think I'm better than that, and then I'm not. And I think he just knew I mean, he didn't know she would say yes, but I think he probably had a sense about her, and or he had gotten better at picking women because he'd been doing it for so long. But I think he was just able to pick out. Plus, I guess supposedly the real Ted Bundy tried to pick girls with long hair that looked like his long dark hair that looked like his girlfriend or his fiance that left him or whatever, supposedly. I don't know. I mean, who knows if anything he ever said was true. But a lot of the victims did look alike, had the long dark hair and stuff. So I don't know. But I
Yeah,
think it was just
he
a
also had
bad.
a girlfriend for much of the time he was doing all of this, which blows my a woman and who had a daughter, and
Yes.
for years and years. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that was
But
crazy.
not hurt her. Why did he hurt? It's just weird.
I don't know. I mean, look at BTK, that guy that did all the familicides and killed the families, but he had a wife. He was like a deacon in his church, and he had a wife at home, and I think 2 daughters. And the wife swears, and he did this for like years and years, and they finally were able to get him based on once we had the internet and they could like trace his IP address or whatever. But the wife swears she never knew. And I don't know if people necessarily believe her, and who knows if that's true, but she sticks by that. One of his daughters has become vocal and said she kind of knew something was wrong, but didn't understand at the time. But the wife says, swears she never suspected anything or saw anything. I mean, John Wayne Gacy was married. So, I mean, I think he
Maybe
was
it's like
divorced.
in I was gonna say maybe it's like in the show Dexter, where it's like he has to like look like a normal person, so he tries to like get a wife and have a
There
kid
you
and
go. I
stuff.
didn't think of that.
Just
That's a very
cover.
good point.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a good point. Yeah, because these narcissists don't care deep down, don't care about anything but themselves. So they're probably willing to add some window dressing, like, oh, a woman and she has a daughter. This is great,
Yeah.
because he could get away with stuff probably longer because he's not going to float to the top of the suspect list right away. When you look like a nice, upstanding young man in law school with a girlfriend and perhaps a stepdaughter and that kind of stuff. So who knows if he ever really cared about her.
Yeah.
Also, he lived in a house, like he lived in a house that an old couple owned. They were renting out a room like for years, and he would help them with things. Like he was a good, you know, from all appearances, a good person to them, and they were very when the police came to search. They're like very, standing up for him because they're like, no, he's a good guy, and
Right.
so but that's like creating that facade, that protection. Um, yeah, they probably do think about that. Like, you know,
Well, the famous author Anne Rule, who worked with Ted Bundy and has gone on to become a very famous author and stuff, and she swears that, I mean, she's a famous true crime author or crime author, and she swears nobody suspected him of anything.
yeah,
And they worked together like on, I think, like a suicide hotline or something.
yep.
Wow.
He's an ex-cop. She did that before she started writing, and so you'd think she'd have like the instincts, but she never did with him until later on.
Yeah.
But even with all the stuff said about him, it did still take her a while to really believe that it could be him. So there must have been something.
Not to
Well,
like
too,
give
I think
anyone an excuse, but maybe too it's like, they get out all their aggression doing these horrible acts, and then it sounds like from the few recountings I've heard from serial killers that it's like then like the weight is lifted for a brief period of time before they start getting that urge to kill again. So I don't know, maybe
yeah,
it's easy, they can come off as nice because they got the
their
asshole
fix. They
shit.
get their
Yeah.
fix, and
Got
then
it.
they're good for a while again. Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, too, I think we as people, like, if I was best friends with this guy at work who just happened to be Ted Bundy, like, for, saying that it took Anne Rule a little while to come around. I think we all like to believe we're smarter than that and wouldn't befriend, a serial killer. And it's like, no, I know Ted. There's no way he would do something like that. And, we just want to think we're smarter than that, but obviously we're not. He's just a master manipulator of everyone. So, and, he sees everyone as what can they do for him. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'll go
back to the book.
Oh, yeah. I'll go through a couple of plot points if you guys want to say anything else about them. And I've got like 5 main ones here. The sorority house attack. Pamela survives a brutal attack, witnessing the murders of her friends. The police struggle to find a suspect due to victim blaming attitudes and lack of physical evidence. Anything else you guys want to say about that?
No, I think I'm good. The only, like I said earlier, the one thing that I thought was really smart was just that Pamela's character is so detail oriented that she was able to remember things in the way that she did and then actually feel confident in like that she remembered them correctly. If I get questions about anything, I have 0% confidence that I know any longer. Like, not even people questioning me in a malicious way, just questioning me at all. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, maybe I don't know. I don't know.
I totally know what you mean.
Yeah, you would need a Pamela in that situation for sure.
Yes.
I thought her little plan for when they all came back to the house for their first night, I thought that was really nice. That they were all going to sleep in the same room with with their sleeping bags and a big cuddle puddle.
Yeah.
Well, that was a nice idea.
It's such a shame that she was put in. I don't think that would happen now. At least I hope it wouldn't happen now, that these women would just be,
put back.
Oh, well, let's all.
I mean,
yeah, back in the house, and they go into class on Monday. I mean, it wasn't. I think Tina mentioned to her like, what, and I think that was the first time Pamela even considered like, hey, maybe this isn't the way to do. Like, maybe this isn't right, that we're just getting. We're supposed to just expected to go on with our lives, and like nobody showed up to clean up the blood in the rooms, and then she didn't get the grant to get the house cleaned up. Like, kudos to her for still staying in charge. This is where, like I said before, she could have fallen apart, but she didn't. And I maybe her love for the other girls or her duty that she felt to them is also helped keep her going. But man, that would be a very hard situation to be in, I think.
Totally, especially because Denise was her best friend. It's just,
and she
really
took it upon
heartbreaking.
herself to call the families, remember? Like, can you imagine?
Oh
no. My God.
Yeah. Oh, and then didn't her, like, the lady who housed them all, that was a sorority sister, was it her that said, like, you shouldn't have been doing that? Like, somebody else should have been making those calls. Or maybe it was Tina. Like,
they both could have said it. I just remember Tina saying it, but I think also that, I can't remember that lady's name, but that sorority lady that was like retired by that time, obviously she didn't think that she should be in that situation, and invited them to come there. So at least somebody was like standing up. Even the police, like, you would think the police would have had some, if nobody else, the police would have had some kind of training, like, well, at least let's get these girls, if nothing else, to preserve it as a crime scene.
Yeah.
But I know things were different back then, but still, it's like, okay, we're done here. You guys all go back to your normal life. And hopefully things are different now. I'm assuming they are, but I don't know. But I would think. Tina's connection. News of the Tallahassee murders reaches Tina, who's convinced it's the same man who took her friend Ruth. She travels to Florida to connect with Pamela. So I guess it's just overall, we talked about what we thought about Tina. I think she was probably my favorite character after Ruth.
she was my favorite character.
Yeah. It's just so obvious, awesome. Her love for Ruth, and she had tons of money, could have probably done anything she wanted. She had her own kind of tragic, messed up backstory herself with marrying that old guy who was sexually abusing her, and yeah. But she seemed to rise above, and she was getting a lot of disdain from, people thought she killed her husband, or that she was a gold digger or whatever. And I think she kind of left that to start her life over and took her money with her, and good for her. But I feel like she used that money for good, so that was good. We were talking about Pamela and Tina joined forces. The pursuit of justice. Pamela and Tina delve into the past, piecing together clues and confronting their own traumas. They face danger as they get closer to the truth. We didn't really talk too much about it, but a lot of, the book does go back and forth, but we do spend a lot of time watching Tina and Pamela really are the ones, it seems like the only ones who are really trying to dig into the truth of this guy. And you've got, this is back in the days, I think, when police departments didn't necessarily talk to each other, and you have them like fighting over who's going to get the collar for, nabbing this guy, and they're just not working together. And so evidence isn't being shared. And just for how many years these two doggedly, which kept a scab on off an open wound for them. It's like they never gave up on this, doggedly trying to bring this guy down, and they were so sure. And I think, eventually 30 years later did kind of shift in their favor, but they never gave up. And that was just, I just loved their unlikely friendship and what they became, and just how much they supported each other. And very unlikely friendship, but I just loved their friendship. So
another thing I liked that just kind of briefly was shared was, that Pamela kept her daughter informed of like all the updates. She obviously knew about the story and was invested. She knew Tina. And I thought that was really cool. We never really get to like meet her daughter in the story, but just her talking to her briefly and just like the way her daughter responds. I really enjoyed that, because sometimes it's really annoying when you watch movies or read books or whatever, and it's like, oh, I have to keep that part of my life secret. And it's like, why? Like she's so invested in this that she's just brought her daughter up knowing about it. You know what I mean? So they can just like openly talk about it and support each other.
Now, correct me if I'm making this up, but didn't her mother have a secret from her that she was taken when she was 4?
Yes, I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah, that was so random.
But okay, yeah, like she was abducted, and then they found her a couple days later, and nobody knows what happened. Mm-hmm. And her own mother kept that from her, until.
And it totally tainted their relationship.
Yeah, and she never understood, like, what's wrong with me? Why are you so close to my sister, but you keep me at arm's length all the time? What a horrible way to grow up. I grew up that very same way. My brother was just like, my mom really wanted nothing to do with me, and my brother, the sun completely rose and set on his ass, and that's just how it was. And I wonder if maybe I was abducted. She won't tell me. I think I was left. I convinced, except I look just like her now, but I'm convinced that I got left on my parents' doorstep or something, and they just took me in out of pity or something. I have no idea, but I felt that same kind of distance and never could ever understand what was wrong with. Now I know there's nothing wrong with me, but you grow up feeling that way. But at least she got some kind of an answer, and her mom did come clean. But both of the moms, like Ruth's mom and her mom, are probably close to being in the same age bracket, I would guess, and they both did the head in the sand, kind of like, well, nothing to see here, we'll just pretend that nothing happened, and we'll just, if we don't talk about it, it never happened.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up right now, actually, because I thought that was a really weird side story. Like, why did they even bring that up at all? But it makes sense if you're thinking about the mothers and the daughters and their relationships, and how she ended up having a different relationship, probably because she didn't want to replicate what she had with her mother. That's great.
I love that. People that change the narrative, Let's see. Go through themes: survivor's guilt. Pamela struggles to cope with the trauma of the attack and the loss of her friends. Misogyny and victim blaming. The story critiques how society often blames victims and disregards their experiences. Women and violence. The novel explores the vulnerability of women and the dangers they face. And the power of female friendship. Pamela and Tina's unlikely alliance demonstrates the strength and support women can find in each other. I'd say that sums it up, and I think are the 4 best parts of the book. And I really, I've said it before, I admire people that can tell a nonlinear story like that, because I feel like you have to be aware of the whole big picture and then try to make a cohesive story out of it. So I am, enamored by her ability to write something like this. And women scare me, but I think there are some good ones out there. I'm looking at you, Jessica, that I can let into my life. And I love when 2 women just support each other. But I don't think that's women's natural. It's not a lot of women's natural way. I think a lot of women feel in competition, and I think anyway, that's a story for another day. But I just absolutely loved the friendship between Pamela and Tina. For as many as terrible things that happen in this book, there's some really great things that also happened in this book. These women that we get to dive deeper into, which, just really made me love the book all the more.
Yeah. Well, and they both kind of lost their best friend, really. And then they became best friends. So it's like this really, I don't know, kind of beautiful healing, through trauma together, also while rectifying what's wrong with the world. And yeah, I think that was also my favorite part of the book.
I do like Pamela's ongoing memories of Denise, especially Denise, but the other girl as well. She'd start naming things, and she's like, these are things that didn't exist, when they were alive.
Yeah, so true.
And I thought that was a nice way to keep reminding us that you're never going to forget those people. That grief, that trauma is always going to be with you, but you can point your life in a direction that has purpose if you choose.
Yeah, true that.
Right.
All right, well, we can kind of go through these questions quickly or not quickly, whatever you guys want to do. What did you know about the Ted Bundy murders before, and how did this impact your interest and experience reading the book?
I really have, like I said, I'm not a big true crime person, so my knowledge is pretty basic. I did watch the Ted Bundy tapes, and I watched that Ted Bundy movie or whatever, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this is just crap that they're putting out for the masses. So I don't feel like I really know, you know what I mean? But I definitely knew about that line from the judge. And I knew about him escaping prison and killing more.
Jumping out of a 2-story window. Yeah.
Yeah. And going on to kill more people. So I feel like I knew what I needed to be able to connect that with the story. And the story's good on its own, I think. You know what I mean? But I do like that it's inspired by that whole thought process having to do with a real life event.
I had seen the Netflix the Bundy tapes when it came out. I don't even think I finished it. But after I read this, so I wasn't that knowledgeable about him, nor did I really care. But after reading this book, I got Anne Rule's book, The Stranger Beside Me. And which is really interesting because it's been updated 4 times, and all the updates were in the book, years later, this is what she thought, or this other detail comes out. But that book blew my mind. And I was really shocked at his audacity. I mean, and how he was able to just get away with so much for so long.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Well, he escaped.
He escaped.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, because he befriended all the people watching him, all the cops and stuff, and so they're, oh well, he's just going into that room because he was working on his own defense, and it was like the law library, and they just stood at the front and just let him go in the room by himself. Like, how did he get people in law enforcement to trust him? Like, I don't get it.
No, he had already escaped by that point too.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you ever leave this guy alone?
Dumb.
Well, that kind of ties into like the next question. How do you think if he was to do this today, what part do you think, like, because of technology, what would be different? I think with just, I don't know, I don't think you can hide like now like you could back then. And you got all these internet sleuths and stuff. People aren't getting away. Like, look at what's her name? That YouTube girl that died last summer that her boyfriend killed. What was her name?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, you do. The girl that she was a YouTuber and she went on the van. You don't.
Oh
my God.
People that were doing the van life thing.
What is her name?
But
Oh,
I know what you're talking about now.
I still have no idea what you're talking about.
hang on, because now I'm looking this up.
I live under a rock.
Gabby Petito. Gabby Petito.
Yeah, Petito.
Jessica, you really don't know about Gabby Petito?
Uh-uh.
Anywho, I mean, that whole case was solved by like internet sleuths and TikTokers and people that found the van. They've been looking for her, and this family that does like YouTube's their like camping trips and stuff. They're the ones that found the van, and they're the ones that are looking and found his body and stuff like this, because people just don't let this stuff go now. I just don't think he could get away with. You can't be anonymous like that anymore, I don't think. So.
One time I was watching my family's dog while they were out of town, and the dog got out, and people on the internet found my family's dog, like in an hour or two. And like somebody was going to try and sell it, and and like people just tracked it down and figured out where this freaking dog was, who didn't have tracking or anything, because my family's terrible and shouldn't own any dogs. And I was like, wow, modern technology, all because I like posted on Facebook.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yay the dog got back though.
I know, I'm glad.
Feel like you put it out there and there's just people who are just like all about that. All right, let's get this solved, which yay for that. I don't think people just assume cops will take care of things anymore. I think people kind of maybe don't have so much faith, and this is, don't come for me. I am not commenting on police or anything like that. I think the attitude is people are trusting cops less and feel like I may as well just do this. Like, I could just do this good of a job and I don't have to wait 24 hours before reporting it. Like, let's just find this dog, All right. So there were many deaths and losses presented in the story. Which one resonated the most with you?
Ruth.
Yeah. I mean, getting her like internal dialogue, and like, we didn't really talk about it yet, but after she's raped and she's like, well, that could have been worse. Now I can still go on and live my life. People have been through this kind of thing and they still go on and live their lives. And just her screaming and trying to get out just to like have another victim show up, and her have not been able to get out in time, and knowing that she's going to be killed, and thinking about Tina in her last moments. I was like,
we didn't really talk about the death, and we really should. I didn't mean to leave that out of the notes, but like I said at the beginning, I think that was just one of the most impactful things I've ever read. And it's like when we were discussing Death Proof the other day, and I said how different it was. You never get that point of view from inside the car when an accident happens, and this kind of feels like that same kind of thing. It gets glossed over usually, like, yes, she was killed. They might even say she was raped or bludgeoned or stabbed or choked or whatever, but this was like a play-by-play of everything that she went through minute by minute, and it was I don't want to say fascinating, but I appreciated it because what we're doing here is trying to highlight the victims. And I think that's the way to really bring it home is let's talk about what a victim actually goes through and what this monster does to these women. It's so much worse than just killing,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't just killed. She was brutalized and then killed. And you got to think you would have all these thoughts, and that's probably what. And she had resigned herself at the end there. Yeah, she was having those thoughts like, well, people do survive this, and I can go on and I have my life and all that. But by the end, I think she knew, and just the kind of how the thoughts switched, and it was just so heartbreaking. But I'm sure that's probably you're still coherent, and you're still, especially I think when you resign yourself to the fact that this is it for me, those are the kind of thoughts I think that you would have. You would lament what you didn't get to do and the people that you love and how your life was just starting and this poor girl that you just also watched get killed. I
Mhm.
mean, that's like a double whammy for her.
And then
So.
she's not found. By the end of the book, they're hoping to find some evidence of where she was buried, but she's not found. And so many questions are left unanswered for everyone that knew and loved her. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, even though he supposedly said where she was buried and they buried those ferns that I guess will change red if there was, human decomposition there. But that could have been any one of his victims. You can't assume that this guy, even in his last hours, would tell the truth. You just can't trust anything that he says. So yeah, but I think that's the reality for a lot of families and loved ones of these victims. So.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what the percentage is of how many people are never found to how many people are. It kind of seems like it might be 50-50. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we ever would ever, there's no way to ever know because there's how many billions of people on the earth. But
well,
I
what
would,
that statistic when I read about tourist trap, it said like so many people are lost every year, go missing, something like.
Oh, yeah.
Or it was an accurate stat too.
and, and how many are killed with psychic mannequins, that some, it might be a very small amount, but some.
More than you think.
Oh, let's see. Kind of talked about that already. The public perception of Ted Bundy is portrayed as him being a sexy idol. Do you think the same public perception would ever prevail today in any capacity? Do
I would
we have a serial killer right now? Any bad
Not that I'm
people that
aware
are
of.
considered sexy that shouldn't be? I don't know.
No.
No, I hope we're
No.
smarter. I do believe, though, that there's like horrible people that I hope this is getting better too, but that get put in positions of power and are able to do bad things, like say a Harvey Weinstein or something. Or you see this with politicians that you find out that they were, secretly doing all kinds of weird stuff, but yet they're able to rise to this position of power and use it again, maybe not just because of their looks or whatever, but I do believe that there's bad people that like we look up to as a society or like look at what Epstein or whatever, how many people
Mhm.
he had in his grasp. Well, I think that's because he had blackmail on him. But I just think you see these awful people getting put in these positions of power that like totally don't deserve to be there. I think is more of a kind of a trap that society has fallen into now. But I don't feel like you hear about serial killers too much nowadays. It's more like it's like mass shootings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like more than 90s, like the Menendez brothers, like wasn't that kind of like, oh, they're so handsome.
Yes.
Um, I mean,
Yes.
I think we have definitely maybe in the last 20 years gotten better about that, not being so shocked that things can happen to to handsome or beautiful people, but
Yeah. And I've heard
O.J.
like news.
Simpson?
O.J. Simpson, yeah.
I've heard news that like when that one shooter who shot up the gay bar in Florida, I remember I think it was on NPR, they were talking about it and they're like, we're just gonna talk about the victims. We're literally not gonna give any attention to the shooter or, give you any updates about him or his life. And they just like highlighted the victims and what their family said about them and went through all their names and stuff. So
I
I
think
think
they
we're
were
getting
doing
better.
the same thing with the Vegas one. Remember that guy that shot all the people at that country music festival? And
Yeah.
I remember that a lot of places were like, we're not even gonna, like, we'll talk about the victims. But so maybe we've gotten better. I hope we've gotten
I mean,
better.
I'm sure there would be like internet trolls on Twitter that are like, "Ooh, they were hot," but not like actual media outlets or something.
Yeah. No Carl out there saying how brilliant the serial killer is.
Yeah.
Speaking of Carl, the next question is, why do you think Jessica included Carl in the story?
I think he represents the idiot press corps at the time, That, yeah.
Also, how regular people were enamored by him also? I mean, maybe Carl wanted money, but I still think he was taken in. He was able to be swayed by him. I don't think it was 100% about money. It seemed like he kind of became kind of buddy buddy. Who knows? Maybe it was just for the money, but he did a good job of becoming kind of buddy buddy with him. He was getting him things that he needed and stuff like that's just gross, you know. So, but maybe that's what it took to be the guy that gets the story.
Them story, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about his role in the story overall, or like why she included it. I don't know.
To give us one more giant punch in the gut, I guess, is why.
Maybe like to kind of give them
those?
hope, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, we've got somebody on our side that's helping us out, Three Musketeers, and then just kidding, you're still doing this all on your own, like
He may have
basically
been
no resources.
a conglomeration of several people that she just made up. Because I'm sure there was plenty of Carls out there. You know, she just wanted to include that aspect of how even like people that should know better, normal white men, not just women, are taken in by him, but he can sway all kinds of police, all kinds of people. So how fearful are you personally that a similar situation could still play out? How much does this fear impact your life, and what precautions do you take to protect yourself against danger? It's a little harder to say now in the age of mass shootings. I don't think there's not much like never leave your house. Things are changing. I mean, the serial killer almost seems tame compared to like the amount of like hate and stuff that we deal with now. You have kids that have these like drills for an active shooter in their school, and so like it's just a different world now. And I think we'd all like to protect yourself, but I mean, I have like a little keychain with a knife on it and an alarm that I take when I go on my walks. Like, I don't know what I think that's going to do for me. I share my location with my kids so that they, know where I'm at, but I don't know what else you could really do.
Yeah. Gotta live life. I don't like, I definitely, when I'm in the process of reading or watching something about crime or something realistic, I do think, what would I do? What could I do in this situation? But I don't sit and ruminate on it. And I'm very oblivious, so I would be like an easy target. I'm not like I'm just like walking to my car, so I'd be easy pickings. But
Yeah, I do. I do that thing, if I'm like walking alone, even if it's like in the middle of the day, just from the grocery store to my car. I do the thing where I have like my keys between my fingers always, and I have this this little thing that my friend made that's like it's like in the shape of a cat, but it's got two pointy ears, so you can like kind of stab someone with it if they approach you in the middle of the night. And I have like a knife necklace, things like that. Like I've always carried knives on me. Well, I kind of grew up in like a kind of like I always say I'm from Palm Springs, but I actually lived in the town next to Palm Springs, which was Desert Hot Springs, and that's like where people used to get sent from Chino Hills prison. It was kind of like as far as they could go, I guess. And I don't know. It's just a very bad area. So I grew up always carrying a knife on me when I was a little kid and stuff.
Well, that's it, right? Like, here's the fallout from that. And isn't that the whole point, that women, even today, why do we have to be on the defensive? Why can't men just control themselves? I hate to say that, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why do I have to? Men don't. Well, I mean, they can walk on. I mean, there's so many trails around here, and I walk them by myself, pretty obliviously. With my both ears with earphones in, I'm listening to podcasts that I'm very into. I would probably also be prime pickings. My older son gives me shit for it. He's like, Mom, but I just feel like it's not going to be me. I'm fine, whatever. And yet, I think all women, it's still something we think about. And is that fair? No, like that's just our reality. We just accept it, I think.
It sucks. I think I've brought it up on here before, maybe, that my daughter, when she went off to University of Oregon, she was carrying her pepper spray with her into town, and a homeless guy like came up to her and knocked her pepper spray out of her hand and said, "Now what are you gonna do?" And she just like ran off. I think he was just like being a troll and just messing with her because he didn't like pursue her or anything, but she was really affected. Yeah, and she's like very, very small. She's a little tiny string bean. So she was very scared and she was by herself. And I was like, that is freaking terrifying.
What kind of guy thinks it's okay? Because she's a little girl. Okay, I'm sorry. I know she's 19, but I'm as a mom, she's a little girl. Like, what kind of dick thinks that's okay to go up to a girl, a defenseless girl who's obviously trying to defend herself to the best of her ability, and think that that's funny or okay to do? You know what I mean? Just like, that takes a special kind of person. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know if if he is one of those like crazy homeless or just normal homeless. So I don't know.
You know how they say, like, women hate when men say, like, you should smile more and stuff. Ugh. The other day, my landlord said to me, you should get out more and walk around. And okay, like, he knows nothing. Like, I rent from him, and he doesn't know anything about me or what I do or that I go to the Y every day or anything. Like, I really had to I almost didn't fuck politeness right then, because it just struck me in such a way, like, the fact that you think you can say that to me and you don't know me, you don't know what I need, you don't know anything about, and I know that must seem ridiculous to people listening to that, but how that just really stuck in my craw and like bothered me, like still bothers me right now, and it was like 2 weeks ago. But it was just like, they just have a certain something that women, I don't know, they go through life differently than we do, I guess, and they just assume a lot, and I'm sure he meant nothing by it. He's a very nice guy, but it's like, just they think that this stuff is, and it's like the same as telling them, you should smile. Why aren't you smiling? That's why. Shut the fuck up.
If I lived in a man bubble, I would be smiling.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like,
I know. I think that about my husband all the time.
Yeah, it's just a different existence, and I'm not even saying it's malicious on their part. It's just a certain grace that they've been given by life to they just don't have the cares, I think, that women, women think about everything, and some of that's just how women are, but I just think we're on the defensive all the time, like we have to be, and even from people who I don't think necessarily mean ill will. They just take certain liberties that they just don't even have to think about, I guess, was my whole point of that story. But it's like,
Yeah. They're just like uneducated and unempathetic. Just kidding, guys.
There's lots of wonderful guys. But guys, don't tell a girl that she should smile or she should get out more when she's fucking working herself to death all day freaking long and has already done her work. And don't get me started. But anyway, you don't think that they like that. It's not cute. You're not going to get a date. They're not going to like you. Just trust me, women don't want to hear that shit.
No, none of them do.
I'm off my tangent.
Thank you very much.
Oh, all right. Let's wrap this up. So instead of trivia, I thought it might be fun to discuss who our favorite character was and who, if anyone, did you picture in your head as you read. Do you guys do that? Do you put people's faces? Do you assign faces to people you're reading about?
Yeah, sometimes I do, but they don't like typically look like celebrities or people I know or anything. And usually it's like I didn't even pay attention when they're being physically described. It's more like just kind of based on around their attitude. Like I will put
Okay, so
on.
all right, I'm the only weird one. All right, then who was your favorite character? We're all gonna say Ruth, right? Or Tina?
Tina.
Tina was my favorite.
I'm still going with Ruth. All right. All right,
well, who did you picture?
Oh, all right, I'll tell you since I'm the weird one.
Yeah, you
weirdo. Know who these people are. Out of it. So for Tina, you guys aren't going to know who this is. I don't know, Christine, did you watch Julia on HBO?
It was a great series, yes.
Okay, so I pictured Tina as Judith, the editor, the little blonde editor. And then Pamela, I didn't picture anyone in particular, but I thought someone that would be like a Ralph Lauren model from the 80s with like Pam Dauber hair, if that makes any sense to you guys at all. And then I pictured Kristen Ritter, who plays Jessica Jones as Ruth, because she said she looked like Snow White with that really white skin and the really black hair and the light eyes. Kind of like myself, if you know what I'm saying. That's it.
That's fun.
The extent of my yeah.
Well, the next time we read a book, I'll try and make a celebrity comparison for you.
I'm not trying to muck with your reading experience. So that's just what Tammy does.
I mean, I do that sometimes if I like see a movie based on a book before I read the book, and then I read the book and I'm like, I can't help but see this.
Yeah, it's impossible after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that like with Stephen King a lot. Like I've all like 99% of it. No, I think 100% of the time I've read the book ahead of time. And then I'll be like, no, that's not what they look like. When they make a movie out of it, then I'm like, no, that is not what so-and-so look like. That's wrong.
Yeah. It's funny.
Expert. All right, want to do our ratings, Jessica? Yours is first here, so you can go first.
Okay. Well,
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Oh,
Christine,
okay.
as our guest, you should go first, right?
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, I would give it an 8. I thought the writing was really strong. The characters were really strong. I loved the points that she made in it. It was a little with the going back and forth in time periods confused me a little bit. Like that would be like one of my only drawbacks, and that could just be me. But trying to keep straight the timelines was a little challenging for me. But other than that, it's a really good read. And it's not, I wouldn't like consider it horror, but it's definitely true crime-ish, and it's definitely a good read. So I give it an 8.
Very good. Miss Jessica, please.
Oh, am I allowed to speak now?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I was trying to be considerate.
I'm also giving it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really well written. I agree with Tammy that there is a little bit of like pacing issues more towards the beginning of the story. And I totally get what you're saying too, Christine, about the the timeline flipping back and forth, especially towards the end when the chapters get a lot shorter and all of a sudden they're like flipping back between 3 different timelines. So I agree with what you said. I don't think it's just you. But yeah, overall, I think that it's like a really interesting and important experiment that the writer did, you know. I really like that she had this concept, you know, that was inspired by something specific, and she like really stuck to the point of her story, you know, and really try to like put herself, I mean, I'm assuming put herself in the shoes of like what these different people in the situation would have to experience and feel and think. So I would, as someone who doesn't typically read stuff like this, I would recommend it. And I am actually kind of interested in reading the Luckiest Girl Alive book too. Not that I do a lot of reading, so I don't know if I could squeeze it in, but I thought the book was well written.
I started out reading the physical book, and then about a third of the way in, I switched to the audiobook, and I found it much better to follow because you get like different voices and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there for anybody who might tackle this. I thought it, and maybe too, like in the first third of the book, I was still just kind of like learning everybody and trying to keep them straight. So I don't know if the audiobook, if it's just that helps, if it's just that I was getting more into the story and I was able to, you know, I was learning more about the characters and was able to follow a little bit better. But I found it easier to follow once I switched to the audiobook. So if anybody wants to try this, I would maybe suggest, if you don't mind audiobooks or enjoy, I like to listen to them when I'm like driving and stuff like that. So, and when I'm taking my dangerous walks, if I'm gonna get nabbed, that's usually when I'll listen to them. But that worked for me. I also gave it an 8, so we're all on the same. I don't think it started out at 8 for me, but it definitely finished. You know, actually, it might have finished more like a 9, and then I'm just averaging it out to be an 8. It was a little bit of a slow start for me, but then, like I said, once I connected with it, I really connected, and I just cared about these characters in a way I can't remember caring about some, maybe since my last time I might have read a Stephen King book or something like that. So I really, really appreciated that. And you forget these aren't, they're kind of real people, but actually your main characters here aren't real, but she just somehow makes it feel like it, you know, and I just really appreciated that. So I think it was I love what Jessica said about this being an experiment, because it's totally true. But I hope she did such a good job on this. I'd like to see her undertake maybe a couple more. It would be just, I think would be like, imagine if she did the Jeffrey Dahmer and, you know, was able to like, because I've said before, you know, I lived here just outside Milwaukee. I'm 15 miles from Milwaukee when all that was going on. And so I just remember that all happening in real time. And I just think there's so many. I always remember, and I know everybody's seen this, that clip of that colored lady in the courtroom. It's like, I hate you, Jeffrey. I hate you. You know, I've seen that so many times. And so I think that I would love to see her undertake maybe something like that, because I thought she did a really good job. I would also love to read Luckiest Girl Alive someday, because we'll talk about it in a minute, what I thought about the Netflix adaptation. But I bet her book was really good, and it was a bestseller, so it must have been pretty good. And I think there was a good story there. I can't say how well I think Netflix adapted it because I didn't read the book. So, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember, Chris. Oh, I know, that's so crazy. We're all like right in the same line of thinking there. Christine, didn't you say that you read Luckiest Girl Alive?
No.
Or were you just bringing up that she had another book with the adaptation? Okay.
Yeah, and that it was on Netflix. And yeah, I would like to read it now that I've seen the movie. But yeah, I thought, well, I'll just, yeah, no.
Yeah, just hold on to your thoughts because we're gonna get into it right now. And we're gonna keep this movie review pretty brief because we've already been going for a couple of hours here. But Christine did tell us that Jessica Knoll had written another book called Luckiest Girl Alive, and that there's a drama thriller based on the book on Netflix, which was released in 2022. It's rated R and it has a runtime of 1 hour and 53 minutes. And Jessica Knoll wrote the screenplay. The director is Mike Barker, who appears to have only really worked in television, but he's worked on some good series like The Sandman, Handmaid's Tale, which I love, and Fargo. And we follow the main character. I'm trying to remember, they say it kind of funny. It's like Ani, right?
Ani,
Is
like
that
the
how they
last
say
half
it?
of it's supposed to be the last half of
Tiffany.
Tiffany. Yeah.
I thought that was so dorky, by the way. But anyways,
Yeah.
so we follow Ani, who's played by Mila Kunis, and the character of her fiance Luke is played by Finn Wittrock, who is in a bunch of American Horror Story
I like him.
seasons. And that's like all I could think. I can only think of him as like an American Horror Story
Same,
person, so I like
yeah.
can't take him seriously.
Yeah.
Her mother Gina is played by Connie Britton, who's also in American Horror Story, and the only season that really matters. And she's also in Friday Night Lights, which yes, I have watched a series about football in Texas. And young Ani is played by, I'm gonna guess this is Kiara Aurelia, and she was in, what was it, Cruel Summer? Was
Yes, yeah, which I loved.
I was
I love
okay with
that.
it, but my daughter loved it, and she made me watch it with her
Yeah.
like twice. So, but I
Well,
did
she's
think
really
that,
great. I think she's a great actress. So I
yeah,
think we'll see
I
more of
agree.
her.
Yes. So that's just kind of all the basic information about Luckiest Girl Alive. So this is on Netflix, and it's not horror, but it is definitely thriller and real life horror. When it comes to like real life horror stuff, we're watching like a school shooting, rape, those kinds of things are really dark. This has a lot. It deals with a lot of dark material. Made me
Yes.
feel it made me feel a lot while I was watching it, to be completely honest. It was like a little hard for me to watch at times. So, it's not straight up horror, but it's definitely like real life horror. And so we're following Mila Kunis's character, Ani. As we mentioned, her name's Tiffany, but she's kind of trying to reinvent herself because she's had a very traumatic past with a few different traumatic happenings. And so she goes from Tiffany to Ani as she's trying to reinvent herself. And as we're getting to know her, we're in New York. She's working at this like, is it like a magazine or yeah, it's like a magazine.
Yeah, I think they're calling it the Woman's Companion, right, or something, but I think it's supposed to be Cosmo, where they're trying to have all those captivating sexual, grab the reader's attention kind of like headline kind of things.
Articles about jobs and like those kind of splashy, but she's trying to work her way up to the New York Times. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's trying to like Piggy, her boss is gonna go there, right? And she's gonna go with her, or she tells her boss she's gonna go with her, but then we see, well, we'll get to it. She reneges on that, but temporarily.
Yes, but we come to find that she didn't grow up rich, but she really wants to get to the point where she's like making her own money, but she's also engaged to a man who it does come from wealth, but she does seem to like truly be in love with him too. But she is
Yes.
also he's kind of like her arm candy and has money, and those things definitely came into play when she's like considering him as a companion.
I
So
think she's in love with the idea of him more. I don't think she realizes that at first. I think she's in love with the idea of him, like really wants to be in love with him because she wants that life for herself ever since she saw that woman on the street in New York and during her field trip when she was like in high school. She said, like, that's the woman I want to be. And I think that's just like the little story she invented for herself because no, she didn't come from that kind of life, but it's the kind of life she wants for herself.
Totally. Yeah. And she wants to be really strong. She doesn't want anyone to think that there's anything wrong with her. A lot of people kind of know about her past already. So she's really trying to give like a specific kind of persona to everybody, that even though she went through these things, that she's like doing really well for herself, doesn't have any issues with the past, and, all of that. So we get a lot of her like internal dialogue where she's kind of talking to herself and about herself, to us, the audience. And something she says a few times is like, turn my key and I'll say whatever you want me to say, because she's like a doll. And that's something that comes into play a few times. But she does start to kind of break down more towards the end, because one of the traumatizing things that happened in her past was a horrendous school shooting. And we get more information on that later on in the movie. But at first, all we know is that she's involved in this school shooting. And for some reason, some people think that she was like actually involved with the shooters in either planning, or they were in cahoots or whatever. So we find out more about that later. But that's like the first traumatic thing that we kind of hear about. And so they're making a documentary about the shooting. And the director wants to meet with her, get her side of the story. And he tells her, that for the record, he believes her that she wasn't actually involved, and he feels bad for her. And he wants her to be able to tell her side of the story because it's never been told before. So that's kind of like our setup for this whole thing. But then we come to find out that the reason why people think she's involved is because she was actually raped at a party by 3 boys. And they're part of like the cool crowd. And when she's talking about the different crowds at school, she's basically like, there were the cool popular kids, and then there were like the nerds. And that's basically it. Like, who cares about the other groups? So she already is kind of setting us up with this mindset. And so she is originally kind of part of like, I guess, the nerdy group, because she's really smart and she's a really good writer. She loves her writing teacher, who basically acknowledges her skill like right from the get-go, which you can tell really had a huge impact on her. We also find out that she has a really strange relationship with her mother, which also gets more fleshed out throughout the movie. And I can't help but think that Jessica Knoll must have a strange relationship with her mother, because this is
Oh yeah, here we go again. Plus, I just have to interject that the teacher is played by Scoot McNairy, who I
Oh,
absolutely love. So
yes,
or
and
you
I thought that there was one kind man, decent kind man that she could go to, and that it was him.
yes, yeah,
Yes. Oh, I loved him. And then like everything that we find out about him and their relationship later on is like so heart-wrenching,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he tries to stand up for her and he gets fired.
yes.
So it's like really gross. But yeah, her and her mom have a really strange relationship. Her mom is a single mother and has raised Ani on her own. But she's also a little bit of a boozer. And she's kind of like, she's a little eccentric, her mom.
She's kind of like white trash that's trying not to be white trash, but she's so condescending to Tiffany and like belittles her and underhands her every moment, like, comments about her weight or just things that'll really like get to her and just like beat her down. Yet in her own mind thinks she's being the mom of the year. So,
Yeah. And I don't know, there's like little things that she does or she says where you feel like she has the best of intentions, and she just like doesn't know, she doesn't
yeah.
understand like the damage that she's causing, like when she drops her daughter off at school on the first day and is like, you're already the prettiest girl in school, which embarrasses Tiffany. But like at the same time, you see those little moments where it's like she's actually kind of trying to boost her daughter and her confidence, but she just like goes about everything in the worst way.
But she also, I think, makes one of the most damaging decisions in Tiffany's life, in that she makes her continue going to school there after everything happens. And when Tiffany tried to tell her, we said Tiffany got raped, right? When she tries to tell her mom about it, her mom immediately is like, kind of like, it's because you're a slut and I raised you better than that and you brought this on yourself. So she's the worst mother at times also.
Right. Yeah. And that whole situation was so kind of like strange already because it's like Tiffany hadn't really come to terms with the fact that she was actually raped, or she was just starting to come to terms with it. And she really didn't want her mom to know about it. So she didn't get to tell her mom like her side of the story. Her mom had to hear about it from like the school and the cops after her daughter's being blamed for a school shooting. You know what I mean? And then when her mom's trying to ask her about it, she's like, well, didn't want it to happen, but she wasn't like, I was raped. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, not to blame the victim, of course, or anything like that, but I just think that the communication was just totally lost between them, especially Tiffany at that age. She just had like no confidence, and, and that's actually a big part of the story too, which I found really fascinating. But as far as the school shooting goes, two of her male friends that are like the nerdy guys, the smart guys, they are the ones that end up doing the school shooting later on. And so, they tie Tiffany in with them, one, because they're friends, two, because they were all wronged. And the boys that they went after were like the boys that raped her because they also did weird shit to one of her male friends.
Yeah.
And it's and then one of her friends puts the gun in her hands at one point and tries to get her to kill one of the boys. And his whole thing is that like he thinks that what happened to her is so wrong and he wants her to stand up for herself. And at first you're like, yeah, this guy's awesome. And he like gets punched for her at school. Well, and he
Yeah.
accidentally elbows a female teacher in the face that's trying to tap him on the shoulder. But you're like, yeah, I get where I mean, he also went about things the wrong. I mean, I'm not even talking about the school shooting, but just the way that he would talk to her about it, about her being spineless. It's like, look, she's traumatized, and it's really cool that you believe her and you're on her side and you're trying to push her to be confident.
Yeah, he was harsh.
He was very harsh.
But it's
But
just like the
then
mom. I think he thought he was doing the right thing, but not everyone experiences trauma in the same way. I mean, maybe pushing someone. I'm sure he thought he wanted her to get mad and do something about it, because obviously he and his friend were about at that point getting ready to do something about it, and they couldn't understand why she wasn't that mad too. And like you were saying, I don't think she'd even accepted what had happened to her yet.
yeah. So it's a bunch of messy situations. And I guess we didn't even really talk about like the rape yet either. Is she's at this party. She went off with the cool kids to go to this party after a dance. She gets drunk. She's like kind of, I don't think she was officially seeing Liam, the boy that she was like kissing at the party yet, but they're like into each other, and she's like excited about the prospect of like being with Liam. So she gets like messy drunk, and then they hook up, right? But she like comes to while it's happening, and she's clearly not happy about it. But I think in her mind, she's like, well, I mean, I like this guy, and we were, kind of like on our way to hooking up. And then
Is it? Yeah.
what'd you say, Christine?
He rationalizes it because he was someone she was interested in, but she was out and then came to in the middle. So that's,
Plus,
Yes.
I think another way she kind of rationalizes, he was just going down on her. He wasn't like penetrating her. Like, and I wonder if some people would not consider that rape. I mean, I think it totally is. If anybody's doing anything to you sexually when you're not, cognizant, I think it's a problem. But I think she didn't like as she came to, because her friend saw him doing that to her, and then he just kind of left. So I think her friend didn't even think that it was that bad. Wasn't it her friend that was like, "Oh, you're still going at it" or whatever to him? We walked in on them when
or who was
Liam was like, yeah,
To be
doing that
honest, a
to
lot of
her.
all those white boys kind of look the same to
Yeah.
me, so I was getting them confused.
Well, I thought that was the curly-haired friend that ended up doing the shooting, wasn't it? I thought it was, and then he
That
just
had
even
walked
walked
by.
away. Yeah, and like
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
walked
you're
in on him.
right.
So
I
I
don't
don't
think he
think even
realized
he
what
was.
was going on.
Yeah, I don't think he was even alarmed. And I think when she came to, and that's what he was doing to her. I think that's why she wasn't like I think later as more things started to be done to her, she was completely aware. I think that was like crossing a line, but I wonder if at first, because it was just him, kind of doing that to her and not really penetrating her necessarily, if she tried to rationalize, well, that wasn't really rape, although then I think she definitely went on to be gang raped. So
Yeah. Yeah, so Liam, unfortunately has his two other bro friends come in and have their turns with her too. And she's like finally awake enough to really fight when oh my God, I forgot the boy's name. Was it Dean?
yeah, Dean's the one, yes,
Yes.
because he's the one that ends up getting in the wheelchair. So he's
Yes.
one of them. I don't remember who the other guy was.
Yeah. So when the third guy is taking his turn, she's finally like really, like waking up and like trying to fight him and push his face, and he's just like, well, whatever, yeah, kissing her hand and stuff. And they do talk about how he was also super wasted, which obviously doesn't make it okay. But that's just another thing that in her mind she's kind of rationalizing, like we're wasted. And I think it's so hard when, you're like blackout drunk and you can't remember things and you just think, what did I do, to make this person feel like this is
Yeah.
okay? Like, did I initiate things? You know what I mean? Is it still rape in that case? So it's just like a really, really hard scene to watch. And it's even harder the next morning when Liam's giving her a ride to get the plan B. And she's like telling him that she likes him and that she's so sorry that she hooked up with his friends. Like, that was not her intention, and he's like, oh, whatever, it's nothing. And you can tell just from that reaction that like he knows exactly what they did. Um, and then when she's like, I think that I might have been raped, he gets super defensive and he's like, do you even know what rape is? Which is like
Yeah.
the worst, most condescending, terrible thing he could have said. It was like, fuck you. Do you know what rape is?
Yeah. Yes.
Uh,
That scene was infuriating.
and that's something
And they
that
all
her,
she meets up with all the same guys and they all walk off arm in arm. Like because right after he takes her to get to plan B, and then they like pull up and the rest of the guys are sitting there on the cars with like the two other girls, and they all just like go out. And I think she's like, well, at least I'm in with the cool kids now, so
yeah, it's really sad. And she's like still kind of processing it. And when she had like finally gotten out of the house and ran away, that's when she ran into Mr. Larson, right? Was that the teacher's name? Yeah, Mr. Larson at like a convenience store, and he took her home and she told him what happened. And he's like, we should call your mom. She's like, no, I can't call my mom, and he's like worried, because obviously having a female student at your house does not look
yeah,
good.
yeah,
But he's still like very supportive and helpful and kind. And he takes her to the dean so that they can file a report. And then once the dean's saying like that they're going to call her mom, she's like, never mind. I can't have that. It's terrible. It's so sad. But yes, and then
yeah.
also one of her friends that starts the school shooting, one of the things that he tells her that is like the harshest is like, you apologize to your rapist. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
buddy, you were going about this the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I guess I don't think I was paying enough attention when their other friend was talking about what the boys had done to him in the woods, because I think at first I thought they were like he was making a joke, and then I realized that like something had actually happened, and so that's like what initiates them wanting to shoot up the school.
well, I don't remember, it was something somewhat like
I
Christine,
feel,
do you remember what it was? His pants were off, I know.
yeah, I feel like they lured him out there for sex. I can't quite remember what the story was, but he was humiliated, whatever.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think someone said that somebody shit on his chest. And I was like, oh, he's making a
Yes.
weird
Yes.
joke. And then he got really offended. I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't a
oh,
joke? This actually happened? Oh, God.
That's
Um,
right. But they also, he was naked though. I remember that. And they did something with his butt. I don't remember what, but I remember thinking to myself, well, that's kind of like, feels rapey to me. I know it's not exactly. And then they like shit on him. But I mean, rape is very humiliating, right? That just all feels like it would bring about the same kind of feelings.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
yeah, just like very violated.
Hmm.
It's very gross and sad. And I mean, whenever there's any like school shooting scenes in a movie, it's like the most terrifying thing to me ever. Just like putting myself in that situation, thinking of myself as like, especially a kid, in a place
Yeah.
where you should be safe is terrifying. And then watching her, have to confront her friend and then ultimately kill her friend is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
poor girl. Oh my God. And it's like all
You know what?
happening during like the most crucial years of her life, and coming of age. It's just like, this is sick.
I think you'd have to bury that so far down deep inside to go on like she did, just swallow all that. And I mean, ultimately, she killed that guy. So I can't believe, I guess people need someone to blame, right? But I just can't believe that everybody's still like, then she tries to go to the funeral and stuff and she gets turned away because people just kind of blame her or try to say she was in on it or whatever when ultimately she killed the shooter.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But also the gold boy ended up paralyzed and the two shooters were dead. I think just everybody felt like they needed somebody to blame, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think it's all really Dean's fault, right? And the really annoying thing about it is that her friend who handed her the gun was doing so she could shoot Dean.
Mhm.
And she doesn't
Well,
shoot
yeah, because
Dean.
no, because he didn't ever want the rape. He knew that she was throwing around rape allegations and didn't want that to come out. And ultimately, we do see those two kind of square off about that later on in her when she's an adult. But
And that
yeah, I think he was.
scene when when she does get to confront him about it, and he's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, come on, I have a wife and kids now. Like I can't let this get out. What happened?" And just I can't even remember what she said to him, but it was so wonderful. It was like, you know, you made that choice. And
Yeah.
I
He
liked
like
it.
tries to drop his handkerchief or something to get her to feel sorry for him and pick it up for him. And she's like, you really think this sympathy bit is going to work on me? She's like, I'm a victim too, but nobody has ever treated me like one. Um, and I was like, yeah.
He
And
was
when
running for
she's,
office too, wasn't he? Running for something. He
Yeah.
was up for something, I think. And like, yeah, he had the wife and kids, but he really like couldn't have that come out and was willing to like lie on this documentary or whatever about it. But she gets him.
yeah, she does. Oh, and I love when she's telling him too. She's like, have you ever even said the word rape? And he's like, I don't think that I have. And she's like, well, I want it to become as much as part of your vocabulary as it is for me. And then when she gets him to finally confess that he raped her and she recorded it, I'm like, fuck
That whole
yes.
time, I'm like, please tell me she's
Yeah.
recording this. And then when I saw her whip, I'm like, yes! When she whips out the phone, I was like,
Yeah.
yes. I think she left him feeling like he was going to get away with it. You know,
Yeah.
I don't, he didn't know that she was recording him or whatever. I was so happy. Like,
Yeah. But yeah, this movie was so hard for me to watch, but I thought it was actually pretty good. It's not something that I would It's like the book. I wouldn't typically put this on unless I feel like this might be something my daughter would be like, "Hey, I heard about this and I think it sounds good." And I'd be like, "Okay, I'll watch it." But if I'm just left to my own devices, it's not normally the thing I would put on. But it really affected me. And there's like that scene at the end of the movie when she finally writes her own story. She's made it to the New York Times. She broke off her engagement, mostly just because she needed to do things for herself. I did think this was weird. Her fiance seemed like very sweet and supportive throughout the movie until that
Yeah.
scene. And he was
Yeah.
even like, you should write about what happened to you, make your own thing instead of just writing about this crap that you don't care about. You know what I mean? And then when she tells him, like, I'm gonna actually like write about what happened to me, and he realizes it's like in full detail, and he's like, do you really need to share that information with everybody? I was
He's the
like, dude.
Carl of this story. And she has that same moment that what's her Pamela had where she finally sees her fiance and the concessions that she's making to have a life with him and she lets him go. So we see that in both stories, which I just absolutely loved. So
I do have
but
to.
yeah, I was on board with him. I'm like, well, at least yeah, he's kind of a pompous ass, but I think he's going to do right by her because you do see him say you should do what's right for you. It just don't until he gets brought, until it could be made public and tarnish his good family name or that he'd be associated with someone like her, and then he's not on board anymore. So
Yeah.
I did think the casting of Finn Whitrock in that role was not a good choice. For me, I don't ever trust him because that's just how he that's the roles he plays. They're
Yeah.
always
that's so true. Yeah.
first looking, I'm like, it's Twisty the clown. I I just don't trust him. Now he did, he played the character and it was a good character, until the end. But I just didn't trust it. And not knowing really what the movie was about, I was going in blind. I also the casting of Mila Kunis kind of threw me because doesn't it open they're shopping for knives and then she
Hmm.
has flash of stabbing someone with a knife, and I with her having been in American Psycho 2, I was like, is that what this movie's going to be like? Is she a psycho? I had no idea. I didn't read anything about it going in, so that surprised me, just what the movie's topic actually was. But just the casting, especially of Finn Whitrock, like, just I thought it was going somewhere different with him. So
Yeah, at first when I saw him, I was just like, I can only see this person as one way. But then, like, throughout the movie, he did kind of actually win me over, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe he is a good guy. And I like just as I
Same.
let my defenses down, I was like, nope, not a good guy. I was
It's a
fooled.
Jessica Knoll story. There's no good guys.
Except Mr. Larson.
Yes. Love him.
I love too that they get to reconnect when she's an adult. That seems
yeah,
so sweet too. They
What a
get like,
great full circle for him, because he had to be left.
yeah.
They take the camera off of him. I notice in the principal's office they never show his reaction to her reneging, and we don't see him again. So I love that we got to see it come full circle and him know that she's okay, because I do think ultimately that's what was important to him. I really think he was a good guy, you know.
Yeah, totally. And, before we even get to that part of the story where he had gotten fired for standing up for her, and they're just talking about it at the restaurant, they say he left, and he didn't leave. He
Mhm.
got freaking fired for standing up for a student that was raped, because it was against the golden boy of the school or whatever. And I
Yep.
think she's going to a private school, right? Her mom gets her into a private school where we have all these fancy rich kids that are used to going to private schools, and she's like the poor kid. Um,
Yep.
scholarship.
yeah,
That written. What? Yeah, they
right,
made fun. That
scholarship.
one girl made. She got that writing scholarship that the one girl didn't get. The ritzy girl didn't get, who doesn't need a scholarship to go there, but I think already had feels about the white trash girl getting it. So Yeah, didn't
Yeah.
she it was obviously high school, but she was like starting a new school, like not her freshman year, like right? It looked like they were like maybe juniors or even
Yeah.
seniors, I'm not sure. But that has to be so hard, you know?
Yeah,
Because a lot
totally.
of those kids usually have known each other their whole lives and their families run in the same circles and you know, to show up just 1 year on a scholarship, you've already got a giant target on your back, you know?
Yeah, even when they're leaving the school dance and she's running off with the rich girl that's like part of the popular kids crew, and the teacher's like, "Well, I'm gonna have to call your mom and tell her where you're going," and she's going to her boyfriend Dean's house, and she's like, "Oh, go ahead. Our moms are best friends. Go ahead, call her." I was
Yep.
like,
And you could just see it on that teacher's or chaperone, whatever he was, face. It's just like, yeah, who am I kidding? You know,
"Yeah,
they have the upper hand here. So,
I'm just sick,
yeah,
just
totally.
sick." Well, did you guys have any other thoughts or themes or anything
I,
that you wanted to bring up about the movie?
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we see those final scenes of her, she wore the dress that she ultimately wanted to wear, right? And I thought that was so the white dress that the plain white one that her mom that just had the little capelet that her mom, I forget what she said, but was like made it clear that was not the dress that she should pick. And then
Yeah.
when we see her at the rehearsal dinner, unless maybe she just wore that to the rehearsal dinner, but she had that dress on, and I was so happy. That's like your first visual cue that she has turned the corner because she hasn't, you know, she everybody still thinks she's going along with London or whatever. She hasn't told them what she's going to do or anything yet, but she comes down in that dress, and I was like, yes, here we go. you know.
What about you, Christine? Did you have anything you wanted to bring up about the movie?
Um, just I really liked it. Like you, I probably wouldn't have watched it other than, this author's connection. But I'm really glad I did. I think it handled a very difficult topic in a really interesting way that we don't really see much. So yeah, I liked it.
Great,
Nice.
great.
Well, you guys want to rate it?
Oh,
Sure. I didn't think
You can
about
just like go
that,
with your,
but
yeah. I mean, just kind of feel
all
it
right,
out. It's not like
all right,
official
guess
or anything. No, don't make her go
what's.
first.
oh
All
no,
right, I'll go. I didn't think about it. Or do you know what yours is, Christine? Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think it's gonna be a 9 for me because of
Oh, great.
a lot of dialogue in there that I just felt was really important in dealing with this topic. I've just heard a lot of things said in it that I've never heard that I think need to be said. Just like her whole thing about she didn't even like telling her fiance, I don't even know who I am because I've never, I've always had to put on this facade and go along with everybody because of her trauma. So I would say 9. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. Something that I really enjoyed was, when she's like reading people's comments to her story, and we see them kind of do close-ups on people like at the park and in the subway that she's getting into, like they're people that are amongst her, and they read her story and it really resonated with them, and they're responding like, when you talked about what it was like to come to, and somebody was raping you, like that felt so powerful for me because nobody ever talks about that, and that happened to me too. Things like that. I was just like, "Oh my god. This is so important." But yeah, I feel like this author is very good at like being tactful and like really highlighting these kind of things that happen to women, that people don't really talk about or happen to victims, in general. Yeah, so I would give it an 8 out of 10 personally.
I'm right with you. I think I would also give it an 8. I also probably would not have watched it because I would have watched it by now if I was gonna watch it because I like Mila Kunis. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know. I'm always like if I have time, I feel like I have to watch something horror, you know, because I'm on these podcasts. But anyway,
Yeah,
I
me too.
don't know. I just didn't watch it. But I'm glad that I did. I think it's a really powerful story, and I know when it came out, it did really well on Netflix, and obviously that book was a bestseller. So I think it's a really good story. I think women still struggle to this day to be believed as rape victims, you know. You like to think we've come a long way, but I'm not sure how far we necessarily have come. I think we're starting, but there's still a lot of improvement that could be made in that area. So yeah, I really thought it was actually quite good. So these are my first two introductions to Jessica Knoll, and I have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised we took a chance on this book just because I had heard about it and brought it up to Jessica. I really didn't know if it was going to be good or bad or anything. So yeah,
Good.
I'm glad it ended up being so good and something that I feel, you know, we ended up having a 3-hour conversation about. So I think that says something about, well, we always tend to talk for 3 hours, but you know what I'm saying? Like it was good, and there was a lot of good points to bring up. So I'm really happy that we read it. And yes, it's not raw horror, but it is definitely chock full of real life horror.
Totally. Well, before we get out of here, I do have a monstrous mention. So for tonight, I've chosen Galisa, aka Shalfetter, I'm guessing is how you might pronounce that, as our monstrous mention. And they do beaded embroidered portraits, many of which are horror and pop culture related, and many which are of iconic female characters. Sometimes the embroidered projects
That
just
sounds so cool.
remain as yeah, they're really cool.
Oh, I
Sometimes,
gotta check that out. Cool.
yes. And I think they're mainly on Instagram. That's how I discovered them. And sometimes their embroidered projects just remain as wall hangings, you know, in the hoops. And then sometimes she turns them into these really cool purses. And the first one that I ever saw was one that she did of Carrie, like looking down with the blood dripping down her face, but it's all beads, you know, and she turned it into a purse. And I was
Oh,
like, wow, that is so awesome. And the level of detail that she's able to achieve with beads is insane. And so that's why I've chosen her for tonight. So Galisa, aka Shalfetter, we salute you. And you can find them on Instagram. It's at SHALFETR, because I'm pretty sure I am pronouncing that incorrectly. So that's where you can find them on Instagram.
I don't even make a guess on that one. I don't know.
So that's their handle on Instagram, and they also have a portrait embroidery guide on Patreon. They have a Buy Me Coffee site as well. So I'll make sure to include all of those in the show notes. But other than that, that's going to conclude this episode of Horror Through Her Eyes. Next week, we'll be reviewing Killer Clowns from Outer Space from 1988. Christine looks excited.
Never seen it, everyone. Here I go.
Oh,
I can't wait. I hope you love it. Please love it.
wait, is there
Go ahead.
something honest about it?
Is there what?
I'm trying to remember, is there like is there something feminist, or is there okay, it's just for fun.
It's just for fun. We're gonna have my brother on. His name is Dylan, and it's his favorite movie. And he showed this movie to my daughter when she was a little kid, like when he was babysitting her without my knowledge. And she came home traumatized by the scary clown movie. And at first I was like, what did you watch? Like It, the miniseries or something? And she's describing this movie and she's like, the Killer Clowns movie. And I'm like, oh my God, Dylan, you showed her Killer Clowns. And I really want to make her like rewatch it because she's been like traumatized by it and never revisited it. And I'm like, Raina, it's so funny. Like you've got to rewatch it. So he's coming on and we're covering that. I thought it would be cool too because it's the 35th anniversary. So I was like, hey, your favorite
Yeah,
movie.
you said there's a new they're re-releasing it or something, right? On Blu-ray or something, did you say?
Yeah,
Something's coming out, right?
they're doing a bunch of different like cool package dealios for
That's right.
Blu-rays with like fun posters, and you can like pick whatever package you want. I don't remember all the details about that, but yes, that was something that was happening. And so I told him that we have to run his name through the Wu-Tang Clan name generator, because that's how I got my name, Amateur Destroyer. And his name was much less cool. It's Pinky Knight, like a knight, that defends
In shining
damsels.
armor.
Yeah, there you go. So he's the Pinky Knight. Worst
Does he
name
know
ever.
this? Or did you tell him or?
I did. He said he's okay with it.
All right, cool.
He said, when in doubt, pinky out, or something to that effect.
Awesome.
So we'll be covering Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and that's currently streaming for free on Tubi and Amazon Prime. Really excited to see what Tammy thinks of it. I feel like Tammy's going to kick me off the podcast, but we'll see. Christine, I don't know if you want to like tell people where to follow you or be friends with you. You don't have to.
Well, I don't have a presence other than my own self. So catch me on the Horror Through Her Eyes feed occasionally. So
yes, come join our Facebook group, and then you can be friends with Christine like we are. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. Although we know that you can't actually review them anywhere where podcasts are found, but you can rate them. And you can join our Horror Through Her Eyes Facebook group page. Email us at horrorthroughhereyes@yahoo.com. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod with a underscore between each word. Follow us on TikTok at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod, and follow us on Letterboxd at Horror Her Eyes. As we bid you farewell, we hope you enjoyed your time with us on Horror Through Her Eyes. It's been a blast diving into the depths of dread with you. Until next time, remember to
Live deliciously.
Yay!
your tag